Lust has a way of quietly taking control if you don't pay attention to it, and it doesn't usually show up as something obvious or destructive at first. It shows up as a craving, a distraction, a feeling that you need something, someone right now. And that's why it's dangerous. Lust should be treated like a warning light on a dashboard, not something to ignore and not something to chase, but something telling you to look deeper. When lust starts to feel overwhelming, it's often not about desire at all. It's about what's missing. It's a signal that you might be lacking intimacy in your life. And intimacy doesn't always mean romance or physical connection. Intimacy is feeling understood, feeling close, feeling grounded. That can come from meaningful friendships, family conversations, spiritual connection, prayer, or simply spending time with yourself without running from your thoughts. A lot of people mistake lust for connection because it temporarily fills a void. It gives you a rush, something to focus on, something that makes you feel wanted or alive. But once that feeling fades, the emptiness is still there. Sometimes it's even louder than before. That's how people end up stuck in cycles, chasing momentary satisfaction while pushing real healing further away. That craving you feel isn't something to be ashamed of, it's information. It's your mind and body telling you that something inside you needs attention. Maybe you're lonely, maybe you're disconnected from yourself, maybe you've been avoiding emotions you don't want to sit with. Lust becomes an escape when facing those feelings feels too uncomfortable. The problem starts when you indulge in it without awareness, when you constantly distract yourself instead of asking why the feeling is there in the first place. Every time you choose the distraction, you delay the work, you delay the growth, you delay becoming whole again. Instead of acting on that urge, pause. Ask yourself what you're really craving. Is it closeness? Is it validation? Is it comfort? Is it peace? Those needs can't be fulfilled by desire alone. They require honesty with yourself and sometimes discipline to sit with discomfort long enough to understand it. Healing begins when you stop running from the signal and start listening to it. Lust isn't the enemy. Ignoring what it's trying to show you is. When you learn to recognize it as a sign instead of a solution, you gain control over it instead of letting it control you. And that awareness can change everything. Losing the person who is part of your daily routine is a different kind of pain. Not just losing them emotionally, but losing the version of life that existed with them in it. Every morning felt automatic. Wake up, grab your phone, text her good morning without even thinking about it. Sometimes you'd FaceTime right after. Sometimes you'd meet her at school, walk together, laugh about nothing, complain about everything. It wasn't just love, it was habit, it was comfort, it was routine. And when someone is woven into your day like that, when they're built into the structure of your life for months, losing them doesn't just hurt, it disrupts everything. Especially when that person was your best friend. The one you called whenever something went wrong. The one you didn't hesitate to reach out to. The moment a problem entered your mind, you already knew who you were calling. Advice, reassurance, ideas, they were your first option every time, and now you still reach for your phone out of instinct, only to remember you can't call them anymore. You can't text them like before. You can't talk it out the way you used to. That connection is gone, and the silence feels heavier than any argument ever did. Or maybe it was your girlfriend. The person you did everything with. The movies, the random food runs, the plans you assumed would always include her. A new movie comes out, and for a split second your brain says, let's go see it together. Then reality hits. You broke up, you're blocked, she's no longer accessible, not online, not in real life, not in the way she used to be. And what nobody really talks about is how your body remembers them too. Your body got used to that text tone. Every notification used to feel like it might be her. Your heart would jump without you even realizing why. Now your phone buzzes, and it's just a bill reminder or some random notification that doesn't mean anything. And you sit there staring at your screen, realizing how much changed when she was in your life, and how empty the routine feels without her. Your days don't flow the same anymore. The structure is gone. The familiarity is gone. The person who anchored so many moments is no longer there to hold them together. And maybe the hardest part of all is accepting that you have to learn how to live life alone again. Not because you want to, but because the routine you built with them no longer exists. The worst pain is falling for someone who isn't ready. Because it's not rejection, it's confusion. They don't push you away, but they don't pull you close enough either. You end up stuck in this space where everything feels almost real, almost mutual, almost love. They'll hold you like they mean it one day and act like they never felt a thing the next. It's like loving someone who keeps their heart behind a door they're too scared to unlock, but too scared to shut completely. And you can feel it. the way they care, the way they soften around you, the way their voice changes when they say your name. There's something there, you know it, they know it, but every time it grows, they panic, they retreat, they shut down, they build walls around feelings you never asked them to confess, and it hurts more than a clean heartbreak ever could, because at least rejection gives you clarity, a yes or a no, but this gives you hope, tiny moments, small kindnesses, late night conversations that make you think you might be the exception. So you stay, you try to love them gently, carefully, without stepping on the landmines of their past. You try to be patient, you try to be safe, you try to prove you won't hurt them the way someone else did. But the truth is, no matter how good you are, you can't love someone into being ready. Readiness isn't something you can inspire. It's something they have to choose. And people who aren't ready will love you in pieces, the soft parts, the lonely parts, the parts they're comfortable giving away. But never enough to build a future with, never enough to meet you where you stand. And that's the part that breaks you. Not losing them, but losing the version of you that believed patience would make them stay. You start questioning yourself, wondering if you weren't gentle enough, or understanding enough, or lovable enough. But you were, you just offered a full heart to someone who only knew how to give half. Sometimes timing really does ruin everything. Sometimes two people want the same thing, but one of them still needs to learn how to feel safe in their own skin before they can feel safe in your hands. And as painful as it is, you can't fix that for them. Love doesn't always mean stay, but I can't keep breaking myself open for someone who can't open up at all. This girl thinks I don't care, but the truth is, the mistakes I make replay in my head 24/7, like a loop I can't escape. People think guys just shrug things off, but honestly, we feel everything. We just don't show it the same. Every time I mess up, I don't just feel bad. I tear myself apart, not physically, but mentally. I call myself names, I convince myself I'm a failure, I beat myself down harder than anyone else ever could. I replay the situation over and over, thinking, why did you say that? Why did you act like that? You always ruin everything. And that voice, it's brutal. Like my brain refuses to let me move on. One mistake turns into a whole story about how I'm not good enough, how I'm never going to be enough. She thinks I don't care. She thinks my silence means I'm unbothered, or that I'm ignoring her feelings, or that I don't take the situation seriously. But the truth is, when I'm quiet, is because inside I'm drowning. I'm replaying every second, every look, every word, trying to figure out where I went wrong. Trying to figure out how to fix it, trying to figure out why I can't just be better. I think a lot of guys go through this. We overthink everything. We analyze every angle, looking for the one thing we could have done differently. We don't move on fast. We just hide it better. And while I'm sitting there in my own head, she thinks I don't care at all. Like I just brushed it off. Like it meant nothing to me. But the truth is, it meant everything. I'm quiet because I care too much, because I'm afraid of making it worse, because I don't know how to explain the war going on in my mind. I know I messed up. I know I did some dumb stuff. I know I acted in ways I shouldn't have. I'm not oblivious, I'm not heartless, I feel every bit of it, but instead of saying what's going on, I sit there beating myself up, telling myself I should have known better, telling myself I shouldn't have made that mistake, telling myself she deserves someone better than me. But if there's one thing I've learned, it's this: you can't punish yourself into becoming better. You can't grow if you're too busy tearing yourself down. And no relationship survives if you only talk to yourself in your head instead of communicating with the person you hurt. Yeah, own your mistakes. Yeah, admit when you were wrong. But don't live in your head forever. Don't let one moment define who you think you are. If you messed up, say it. If you care, show it. If you want to do better, prove it. And if they believe you, great. If they don't, keep showing up. Your actions will speak long before your explanations do. But stop destroying yourself. Stop replaying the same scene like it decides your entire worth. You're allowed to mess up. You're allowed to learn. You're allowed to grow. That's what I'm trying to remind myself now. I'm trying to take the lesson without the self-hate. I'm trying to be a better version of myself. Not a perfect person, just a real one. And that's all any of us can do. It's strange how people don't really care about how you're feeling until you start acting different. You can be struggling quietly for weeks, even months, and nobody notices. You still show up, you still smile, you still say, I'm good, even when you're not. You laugh at jokes you don't even hear. You hold conversations while your mind is somewhere else entirely. You keep being the strong one, the chill one, the reliable one everyone counts on. And that becomes your role. The person who's always fine, always understanding, always there. But the moment your energy shifts, the moment you take longer to reply, the moment you stop forcing yourself to show up the same way, now suddenly everyone notices. What's wrong? Why are you acting different? But let's be honest. They're not asking because they care. They're asking because you stopped being convenient, because you stopped playing the part they were comfortable with. What hurts the most is knowing you were hoping someone would notice before it got to that point, before you had to pull back, before you had to protect yourself, but they didn't, because most people don't listen to silence. They only react to distance. They don't see you drowning when you're still smiling. They only care once you stop swimming for them, and that's when you realize the truth. People don't miss you when you're struggling. They miss you when your absence disrupts their life. So don't feel guilty for pulling back. Don't apologize for choosing peace. You're not cold. You're not acting funny. You're just tired. Tired of being the one who checks in. Tired of being strong for everyone else. Tired of people only noticing your worth once you stop giving them access to it. Let go of the people who only want the best parts of you. Take me back to the night we met, because that was the last time everything felt untouched. The last time my heart wasn't carrying the weight of you. I replay it more than I should. The way you smiled like you had no idea what you were about to become to me. The way time slowed down for just a second. Almost like the universe was whispering, pay attention, this moment is going to matter someday. And I swear, I didn't know it then. I didn't know how deeply that night would root itself into my memory, how it would become the bookmark I keep flipping back to, even when I'm trying so hard to move forward. Back then, everything felt light, pure, hopeful, like life was finally giving me something soft to hold on to. I didn't know that softness would one day turn into something that hurts to remember, because now I'm just learning to live with the ghost of you. You're not here, you're not gone, you just exist in every place my mind wanders when it's tired. I see you in strangers' mannerisms, in songs that randomly come on, in the silence of my room when it's too late to pretend I'm okay. It's the little things that get me. The way a random memory will hit me out of nowhere, like the universe is trying to remind me of something I've been trying to forget. I'll hear a laugh that sounds like yours, or a phrase you used to say, and suddenly I'm right back in that moment, standing next to the version of me who still had you. And the worst part, I don't know how to move on, not really. People tell me time heals, but all time has done is make the memory sharper, clearer, more painful in a way I didn't expect. I don't need forever with you. I don't need a perfect ending. Sometimes I just wish I could go back to the before I knew what it felt like to miss someone who is still alive, just not mine. Before I learned how heavy memories can feel when they become the only place someone still exists. Take me back to the night we met, because that was the last time my heart wasn't haunted by you. Going through that stage in a relationship where all you do is argue is one of the worst feelings in the world. Because it's not like you stopped loving them. It's not like you don't care. You still want to be with them. You still want to talk to them, laugh with them, spend time with them. But for some reason, you just can't see eye to eye anymore. She doesn't understand you. You don't understand her. And every conversation turns into tension. Every small thing becomes a problem. So now y'all are distant. Not on the phone like you used to be. Not checking in the same way. Not feeling connected the way you once did. And what hurts the most is knowing they probably don't even realize how much this is breaking you inside, how unhappy you are, how badly you just want them to understand your side, the way you're trying to understand theirs. This is the stage where most people give up. They start thinking, maybe this person isn't the one for me. But that's not the truth. Every real relationship goes through moments like this. Moments where communication feels impossible. Moments where love feels buried under frustration. Moments where both people are tired, misunderstood, and hurt. That doesn't mean you leave. That doesn't mean you stop trying. That doesn't mean the love isn't real. Love isn't only the easy days. It's not just laughing and being happy all the time. Pushing through the rough moments together instead of walking away when things get uncomfortable. Every road gets rocky. Every path gets hard. But if you keep walking, eventually you hit smoother ground. The arguing won't last forever. The distance won't last forever. The sun does come back out, but too many people quit right before things start getting better. They leave when saving the relationship was still within reach. So don't give up on someone you love just because things are hard right now. Go through the struggle with them. Grow through the pain together, because the relationships that last aren't the ones that never argue. They're the ones that choose each other, even when it hurts. It hits different when you finally realize you're not as important as you thought you were. Not because anyone said it out loud, but because their actions slowly started saying it for them. The replies got shorter. The effort faded. The conversations that once lasted all night now feel forced, or don't happen at all. At one point, you were their go-to, their comfort, the person they called when they couldn't sleep, the one who always showed up, always listened, always cared a little more than you probably should have. They made you feel like you mattered, like your presence meant something, like you were needed, and and maybe that's why this hurts the way it does. Because now you barely recognize the version of them that's talking to you, if they even talk to you at all. You start replaying everything in your head, wondering where it changed, wondering what you did wrong, wondering if you asked for too much or gave too much or just cared in a world that didn't ask for that kind of heart. Not even about wanting them back anymore, it's about questioning if it was ever real, if the connection you felt was mutual, or if you were just filling space until something better came along. That's the part no one talks about, how being slowly forgotten hurts more than being cut off completely, because there's no closure, just confusion, just silence where love used to be loud. You gave them the best parts of you, your time, your energy, your late nights, and honest feelings, and they walked away like it was nothing, like it didn't leave a mark. But here's the truth you need to hear. You didn't lose your value, you didn't become less important, you just stopped being important to someone who couldn't meet you where you were. And that doesn't mean you were too much, it means they weren't enough. Some people can't handle someone who loves deeply, who shows up consistently, who cares without keeping score. They don't know what to do with that kind of heart, so they distance themselves, they detach, they disappear. But one day someone else will meet you and won't need reminders of your worth. They won't make you question your place in their life, they won't make you feel optional, because the right people don't forget you. They don't slowly fade away, they stay. And until then, remember this: being forgotten by someone you cared about doesn't mean you didn't matter. It just means you loved louder than they were capable of hearing. I make fake scenarios in my head, not the good kind, not the hopeful ones, the kind where I lose you in ways that haven't even happened yet. It's like my brain refuses to let me have peace, even when things are good, even when you're here, even when you've given me no real reason to doubt you. I still imagine the worst. I picture you texting someone late at night, laughing at messages I'll never see, sharing parts of yourself that I thought were mine. I imagine the day you wake up and realize maybe I'm not enough, maybe this isn't what you really want, maybe I was just a phase you outgrew, and I hate it. I hate how real it feels. I hate how convincing my own mind can be, because it's not about trust. I trust you more than I trust myself. It's about fear of losing something that means so much to me that my mind tries to write the ending before the story even gets there. Like if I can imagine the heartbreak first, maybe it won't destroy me when it happens. Like if I prepare for the pain, I'll somehow be ready for it. But the truth is, it already hurts. It hurts now. Just thinking about it, just imagining it. That's what overthinking does. It turns love into a battlefield where the only war is in your head. It makes you fight shadows. It makes you grieve losses that never happened. It makes you mourn versions of people and endings that don't even exist. I catch myself replaying conversations, analyzing tones, reading between lines that were never written. Did that text sound distant? Why did it take longer to reply? Why did my chest tighten for no reason at all? And I know it doesn't make sense. I know there's no proof. I know I'm creating problems out of thin air, but my body doesn't know that. My heart doesn't know that. It reacts like the pain is real, like the loss already happened. My chest still sinks. My stomach still knots. My heart still breaks like it actually happened. I wish I could turn it off. I wish I could silence the what ifs just long enough to breathe, just long enough to enjoy what's right in front of me, because the present moment is good, and I don't want to ruin it by being afraid of a future that might never come. But overthinking doesn't care about logic, it doesn't care about reassurance, it doesn't care about facts, it only cares about fear. And fear always finds a way to whisper the worst case scenario. It tells you to brace yourself, to pull back, to protect your heart before it's even in danger. But sometimes, in trying to protect yourself, you start hurting yourself instead. You start distancing yourself from love, from happiness, from something that could actually be real. And maybe this is a reminder I need. Maybe this is a reminder you need. Don't scare yourself out of something that could be the greatest experience of your life. Don't grieve an ending that hasn't even been written. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop listening to the fear and choose to stay present, even when it's scary, even when it feels vulnerable, even when your mind is trying to convince you you're about to lose everything. Because love isn't meant to be survived, it's meant to be lived. And if you can still listen, even when it's hard, there's still a way back. It's letting the distance grow so wide that you forget how to listen to the person you once loved without effort. Because the real loss isn't the argument, it's I'm still here. I still care. Let's figure this out together. And the truth is, sometimes the most powerful thing you can say isn't another argument. Love survives not because people never argue, but because at some point they choose understanding over being right. Sometimes the only way back to each other is slowing down and actually hearing what's being said beneath the anger. because love isn't about who wins. It's about who's willing to listen even when it's uncomfortable, even when it hurts your pride, even when silence feels easier. You have to stop fighting each other and start fighting for the version of us that existed before ego took over. Not by winning the argument, not by proving your point harder, not by keeping score of who's hurt who more. If you still care, if there's even a small part of you that hopes things can get better, then something has to change. And now both of you are stuck arguing through the pain instead of talking through it. You're not angry, you're hurting, but the pain comes out sideways. Instead of saying, I'm scared of losing you, you argue over something small that doesn't even matter. Instead of saying, I feel ignored, you shut down. So instead of saying, that hurt me, you raise your voice. Especially as a man, you were probably never taught how to communicate hurt without sounding cold, defensive, or angry. I don't want to lose you. That storm where both people are tired, emotionally drained, misunderstood, and too hurt to say the one thing that actually matters. Every real connection goes through this phase. But here's the part nobody really talks about. You just want to feel seen again. You want to feel like your feelings still matter, like the version of you that made them laugh, that made them feel safe, that made them choose you is still there, somewhere underneath all this tension. You don't want to argue, you don't want to push them away, you don't want to feel distant from someone who used to feel like home. What hurts the most is that deep down, neither of you actually wants this. Now it feels like every conversation is a competition. You're fighting to be heard, they're fighting to be right, and while you're both swinging, nobody's actually winning. You miss when things were easy, when you could sit in silence together and it didn't feel awkward, when laughing came naturally, when being around each other felt safe, not stressful, and you miss how it used to be. You look at each other and it doesn't feel soft anymore, it feels tense, like you're walking on eggshells trying not to set the other person off. It's about tone, it's about who said what, who felt disrespected, who's wrong, who needs to apologize first. The texts start feeling colder, shorter, dry. Calls don't last as long anymore. And when you do talk, it's not about love. It's not about missing each other. It's not even about how your day went. Like you could say something as simple as, good morning. And by the end of the conversation, it's, why are you talking to me like that? Or, what's your problem? You ever reach that point in a relationship where everything somehow turns into an argument? It's strange how people don't really care about how you're feeling until you start acting different. You can be struggling quietly for weeks, even months, and nobody notices. You still show up, you still smile, you still say, I'm good, even when you're not. You laugh at jokes you don't even hear. You hold conversations while your mind is somewhere else entirely. You keep being the strong one, the chill one, the reliable one everyone counts on. And that becomes your role. The person who's always fine, always understanding, always there. But the moment your energy shifts, the moment you take longer to reply, the moment you stop forcing yourself to show up the same way, now suddenly everyone notices. What's wrong? Why are you acting different? But let's be honest. They're not asking because they care. They're asking because you stopped being convenient, because you stopped playing the part they were comfortable with. What hurts the most is knowing you were hoping someone would notice before it got to that point, before you had to pull back, before you had to protect yourself, but they didn't, because most people don't listen to silence. They only react to distance. They don't see you drowning when you're still smiling. They only care once you stop swimming for them. And that's when you realize the truth. People don't miss you when you're struggling. They miss you when your absence disrupts their life. So don't feel guilty for pulling back. Don't apologize for choosing peace. You're not cold. You're not acting funny. You're just tired. Tired of being the one who checks in. Tired of being strong for everyone else. Tired of people only noticing your worth once you stop giving them access to it. Let go of the people who only want the best parts of you. Every girl needs to understand this, and I mean really understand it. If you have a man in your life who is willing to do anything for you, a man who loves you unconditionally, who shows up without being asked, who takes the extra step even when he's tired, even when he's stressed, even when life isn't going his way, that is not normal. That is rare. That is something most people spend their entire lives searching for and never find. A man like that doesn't just come around every relationship. You get that man once, maybe twice in your entire lifetime if you're lucky. And if you decide to let him go, if you push him away, if you take him for granted, you didn't just lose a relationship. You fumbled something special in ways you won't fully understand until it's gone. We're living in a generation where a lot of guys are completely fed up with love. They've been lied to, cheated on, emotionally drained, and replaced like they were nothing. So now they move different. They become colder, they become nonchalant, they stop loving the way they used to because every time they did, it cost them something, not because they wanted to hurt anyone, but because that's what the world taught them to do, just to survive. So when you find a man who still loves deeply, who still cares, who still communicates instead of shutting down, who doesn't disappear when things get hard, who doesn't make you question where you stand, you need to understand how rare that really is. Some people don't know how to handle good because they've never been shown good before. Chaos feels normal to them. Peace feels boring. Stability feels unfamiliar. So when something healthy finally shows up, they self-sabotage it, they test it, they disrespect it, they assume it's replaceable. And don't get it twisted. Guys do this too. But if you have a good man, don't play with that blessing. Don't think you can treat him however you want and he'll always stay. Don't think his patience is unlimited. Don't think his heart won't eventually get tired. Pull the petty shit to the side. Learn how to grow. Learn how to communicate instead of argue. Pay attention to the small things he does because those small things are how he shows his love. Be in tune with his emotions the same way he's in tune with yours. If he listens to you, if he protects your heart, if he shows effort without excuses, if he chooses you every day even when it's not easy, don't lose him thinking you'll just find another one like him. Because men like that are rare as fuck. And once they're gone, they don't come back the same. So be good to bro because honestly, he deserves it. Why is receiving love so hard? I give it so easily without thinking, without hesitation, but somehow it never seems to find its way back to me. I watch people love each other so effortlessly, laughing, holding hands, belonging to one another like it's the most natural thing in the world, and I can't help but wonder what that feels like. To be chosen, to be wanted, to be loved the way I love. Because somehow I'm always the giver, the one who listens, the one who shows up, the one who makes sure everyone else feels cared for. I pour into people like it's my purpose, but when it's my turn, everyone suddenly forgets how to pour back. And I tell myself it's fine. I tell myself I don't need much. I convince myself that being the strong one or the understanding one is enough. But deep down there's this quiet ache, this tiny voice that whispers, when is it going to be my turn? When will someone love me the way I love them? When will someone choose me without hesitation? I'm not asking for grand gestures. I'm not asking for perfection. I just want to feel like I matter to someone the same way I make them matter to me. Because giving love is easy. Receiving it, that's the part that feels almost impossible. But still, I wait. I hope, I believe that one day someone will see me, really see me, and finally choose me the way I've always chosen everyone else. And if you can still listen, even when it's hard, there's still a way back. It's letting the distance grow so wide that you forget how to listen to the person you once loved without effort. Because the real loss isn't the argument, it's I'm still here. I still care. Let's figure this out together. And the truth is, sometimes the most powerful thing you can say isn't another argument. Love survives not because people never argue, but because at some point they choose understanding over being right. Sometimes the only way back to each other is slowing down and actually hearing what's being said beneath the anger. Because love isn't about who wins, it's about who's willing to listen even when it's uncomfortable, even when it hurts your pride, even when silence feels easier. You have to stop fighting each other and start fighting for the version of us that existed before ego took over. Not by winning the argument, not by proving your point harder, not by keeping score of who's hurt who more. If you still care, if there's even a small part of you that hopes things can get better, then something has to change. And now both of you are stuck arguing through the pain instead of talking through it. You're not angry, you're hurting, but the pain comes out sideways. Instead of saying, I'm scared of losing you, you argue over something small that doesn't even matter. Instead of saying, I feel ignored, you shut down. So instead of saying, that hurt me, you raise your voice. Especially as a man, you were probably never taught how to communicate hurt without sounding cold, defensive, or angry. I don't want to lose you. That storm where both people are tired, emotionally drained, misunderstood, and too hurt to say the one thing that actually matters. Every real connection goes through this phase. But here's the part nobody really talks about. You just want to feel seen again. You want to feel like your feelings still matter, like the version of you that made them laugh, that made them feel safe, that made them choose you is still there, somewhere underneath all this tension. You don't want to argue, you don't want to push them away, you don't want to feel distant from someone who used to feel like home. What hurts the most is that deep down, neither of you actually wants this. Now it feels like every conversation is a competition. You're fighting to be heard, they're fighting to be right, and while you're both swinging, nobody's actually winning. You miss when things were easy, when you could sit in silence together and it didn't feel awkward, when laughing came naturally, when being around each other felt safe, not stressful, and you miss how it used to be. You look at each other and it doesn't feel soft anymore, it feels tense, like you're walking on eggshells trying not to set the other person off. It's about tone, it's about who said what, who felt disrespected, who's wrong, who needs to apologize first. The texts start feeling colder, shorter, dry. Calls don't last as long anymore. And when you do talk, it's not about love. It's not about missing each other. It's not even about how your day went. Like you could say something as simple as good morning. And by the end of the conversation, it's why are you talking to me like that? Or what's your problem? You ever reach that point in a relationship where everything somehow turns into an argument? Why does fitting in feel like a full-time job? Like you gotta work twice as hard just to be seen as average. If you don't have the face card, the perfect body, the clothes everybody else wears, the confidence they were just born with, you don't get treated the same. You get pushed aside, overlooked, judged before you even open your mouth, and the worst part, it makes you start believing something is wrong with you instead of the world around you. Growing up, I always felt like the odd one out. I didn't look like the kids who got attention. I didn't have the money or the style. I didn't have the effortlessly cool aura that everyone else seemed to have. I was just me. And apparently me was never enough for anybody. All I wanted was to fit in. Not to be popular, not to be the center of attention, just to be accepted, just to have a friend group that saw me instead of seeing what I lacked, but instead I got judged for everything. How I looked, how I talked, what I wore, what I didn't have, things I couldn't even control. It's crazy how people will look at you for 2 seconds and decide your whole worth off those 2 seconds. And it hurts, because deep down, all I ever wanted was for someone to see me for who I actually am. Not for the face, not for the body, not for the clothes, but for my heart, my loyalty, my intentions, my personality. I'm tired of feeling like I have to meet some criteria just to be treated like a human. Tired of feeling like I need to change myself just to be allowed in the room. One day I hope the world stops judging people by the outside. One day I hope just being me is finally enough. But until then, I'm learning to stop chasing acceptance from people who never cared to understand me in the first place. Because not fitting into their world doesn't mean I don't belong in my own. A man who still tries to talk to you even after you pushed him away, that's not weakness, that's love. Because walking away is easy. Silence is easy. Giving up is the most common reaction these days. The moment things get uncomfortable, the moment emotions get messy, most people choose distance. They disappear, they ghost, they convince themselves that leaving means self-respect, but staying, trying again, reaching out when you've gone cold, that takes courage. He noticed the shift before you ever said anything. He felt the energy change, the shorter replies, the longer gaps, the way your voice sounded tired instead of warm. He heard the silence in places where there used to be laughter. And even then, he didn't assume you were done. He didn't write you off as difficult. He didn't label you as too much. He didn't turn your walls into a reason to leave. He stayed because he sees you, not the version of you that pushes people away, not the version of you that says, I'm fine when you're not, but the version underneath all of that, the one that's overwhelmed, the one that's scared to be hurt again, the one that learned distance before it learned safety. And that's the difference. Anyone can love you when you're easy. Anyone can stay when you're smiling, present, affectionate, but loving you when you retreat, when you shut down, when you don't know how to ask for reassurance, that's real. It's like Kaneki and Toka, even when everything got dark, even when he tried to disappear from the world, even when he became someone unrecognizable, she never stopped seeing who he was underneath the pain. And eventually he came back, not because love magically fixed him, but because love reminded him of who he was. That's what patience does. A man who keeps trying isn't chasing, he isn't desperate, he isn't weak, he's choosing to believe that the distance isn't the truth, choosing to believe that your silence isn't rejection, choosing to believe that what you're going through is heavier than what you're showing. And in a world where everyone is replaceable, where dating is treated like scrolling, where people move on at the first inconvenience, that choice matters. Because real love isn't loud, it isn't dramatic, it doesn't announce itself, it's quiet consistency, it's patience without pressure, it's still showing up even when there's nothing being given back. So if there's a man who still texts after being left on red, who still checks in when you pull away, who still shows up when you're at your coldest, don't take that lightly. Not everyone will have the heart to love you through your walls. Real love doesn't quit at the first sign of difficulty, it waits. it understands, it stays, and sometimes that kind of love is rarer than we realize until it's gone. Caring deeply for someone who is never interested in you is one of the fastest ways to lose yourself. It's exhausting in a way people don't talk about enough. You keep trying, hoping something will change, convincing yourself that if you give a little more, love a little harder, or wait a little longer, it'll finally turn into something real. But the truth is, nothing grows where there's no effort on the other side. Think about the pattern. They don't reach out first. They take hours, sometimes days, to respond. Conversations feel forced or short, plans rarely happen, and yet you're still showing up emotionally, investing time, and holding space for someone who isn't doing the same for you. That imbalance slowly wears you down, not all at once, but quietly, until one day you realize you've been pouring into a cup that was never meant to be filled. What hurts the most isn't that it didn't work out. It's the way it makes you question your worth. You start wondering why you weren't enough or what you could have done differently, but the reality is your value was never the issue. Interest can't be forced, and connection can't be created by effort alone. Staying where you're not wanted teaches your mind to accept less than you deserve. It makes rejection feel familiar. It turns hope into habit and disappointment into routine, and over time it chips away at the way you see yourself. That's why walking away isn't giving up, it's choosing to protect your peace. If someone doesn't want you, believe them, not because you're lacking, but because the right person won't make you question where you stand. They won't leave you guessing. They won't make affection feel like a reward you have to earn. Letting go doesn't mean it didn't matter. It means you're finally allowing yourself to move towards something that does. Stop holding on to potential that only exists in your head. Stop trying to read meaning into small gestures or brief moments of attention. Consistency is clarity, and when you finally choose to step back, you'll notice something important. Your energy returns, your confidence rebuilds. You remember who you were before you started shrinking yourself to fit into someone else's indifference. Choose the path that leads you to someone who wants you without hesitation. Choose yourself. You never really liked me, did you? Not in the way I liked you. You liked the idea of me, the convenience, the way I showed up when you were bored, lonely, or needed someone to fill the silence. You liked having someone who replied fast, someone who cared deeply, someone who never made you question where they stood. You liked the attention, the validation, the comfort of knowing someone was always there for you, even when you weren't giving much back. But me, the real me, with emotions, with needs, with expectations, that version of me was never what you signed up for, because the moment I asked for effort, the moment I wanted consistency, the moment I needed reassurance instead of confusion, everything changed. That's when you started pulling away. Replies got shorter, energy shifted, affection turned into distance, and that's when it finally hit me. You were never in this for me. You were in it for what I could give you, the way I made you feel important, the way I listened without interrupting, the way I stayed even when I was hurting, the way I gave love freely without demanding it in return. I was safe for you, comfortable, predictable, but you never planned on meeting me halfway, and what hurts the most is realizing that the person who gives the most usually ends up being the one forgotten the fastest. I replay everything now, every conversation, every moment I ignored my gut. I see how I confused mixed signals for love, how I mistook attention for intention, how I kept telling myself, maybe they're just scared, maybe they need time, maybe one day they'll choose me the way I chose them, but wanting someone to choose you shouldn't feel like begging. And love shouldn't feel like you're constantly proving your worth. I stayed longer than I should have because I believed in potential, because I saw what it could be, because I loved the version of you that only existed when it was convenient for you. And that's the hardest truth to accept, that the connection felt real to me but optional to you. So now I'm done asking questions I already know the answers to. I'm done waiting for explanations that will never come, because silence is an answer. Distance is an answer. Effort, or the lack of it, is an answer. You never really liked me. Not enough to stay, not enough to try, not enough to choose me when it mattered, and for the first time, I'm not angry about it. I'm just learning how to let go of someone who only loved me when it was easy. I'm choosing myself now, even if it hurts, even if it takes time, because I deserve more than being someone's option when I gave them my everything. And if you can still listen, even when it's hard, there's still a way back. It's letting the distance grow so wide that you forget how to listen to the person you once loved without effort. Because the real loss isn't the argument, it's I'm still here. I still care. Let's figure this out together. And the truth is, sometimes the most powerful thing you can say isn't another argument. Love survives not because people never argue, but because at some point they choose understanding over being right. Sometimes the only way back to each other is slowing down and actually hearing what's being said beneath the anger. because love isn't about who wins. It's about who's willing to listen even when it's uncomfortable, even when it hurts your pride, even when silence feels easier. You have to stop fighting each other and start fighting for the version of us that existed before ego took over. Not by winning the argument, not by proving your point harder, not by keeping score of who's hurt who more. If you still care, if there's even a small part of you that hopes things can get better, then something has to change. And now both of you are stuck arguing through the pain instead of talking through it. You're not angry, you're hurting, but the pain comes out sideways. Instead of saying, I'm scared of losing you, you argue over something small that doesn't even matter. Instead of saying, I feel ignored, you shut down. So instead of saying, that hurt me, you raise your voice. Especially as a man, you were probably never taught how to communicate hurt without sounding cold, defensive, or angry. I don't want to lose you. That storm where both people are tired, emotionally drained, misunderstood, and too hurt to say the one thing that actually matters. Every real connection goes through this phase. But here's the part nobody really talks about. You just want to feel seen again. You want to feel like your feelings still matter, like the version of you that made them laugh, that made them feel safe, that made them choose you is still there, somewhere underneath all this tension. You don't want to argue, you don't want to push them away, you don't want to feel distant from someone who used to feel like home. What hurts the most is that deep down, neither of you actually wants this. Now it feels like every conversation is a competition. You're fighting to be heard, they're fighting to be right, and while you're both swinging, nobody's actually winning. You miss when things were easy, when you could sit in silence together and it didn't feel awkward, when laughing came naturally, when being around each other felt safe, not stressful, and you miss how it used to be. You look at each other and it doesn't feel soft anymore, it feels tense, like you're walking on eggshells trying not to set the other person off. It's about tone, it's about who said what, who felt disrespected, who's wrong, who needs to apologize first. The texts start feeling colder, shorter, dry. Calls don't last as long anymore. And when you do talk, it's not about love. It's not about missing each other. It's not even about how your day went. Like you could say something as simple as, good morning. And by the end of the conversation, it's, why are you talking to me like that? Or, what's your problem? You ever reach that point in a relationship where everything somehow turns into an argument? The cruelest lie people tell is that time heals everything. It sounds comforting, it sounds hopeful, but it's not true. Time doesn't erase certain people, it doesn't make them disappear, it just teaches you how to live around the space they left behind. There's always that one person you never fully get over. You don't think about them every day, you're not stuck in the past, you keep moving, you keep living, you date again, you laugh again. You meet new people who make you feel seen in different ways, and for a while you convince yourself you're okay. You tell yourself you've moved on, but then something small happens. A song plays, not even a sad one, just one you used to listen to together. Or you see someone with the same smile, the same walk, the same way of looking at the world. Or you pass a street where you once held hands, once talked about the future, once felt safe, and suddenly it's like no time passed at all. You're right back there, back in the memory, back in the feeling, back in the loss. That's when you realize something important. Healing isn't forgetting. Healing is carrying. Some people leave fingerprints on your soul so deep they never fade, no matter how far you go. No matter how much distance you put between you and them, no matter how many new chapters you start, they stay, not as a constant ache, but as a quiet presence. They shape the way you love now, the way you hesitate, the way you second guess opening up. They teach you caution. They teach you restraint. They teach you how badly things can hurt when you give your heart without a safety net. And sometimes you hate that. You wish you could love the same way again, fearless, unprotected, all in. But maybe that's not something to be ashamed of. Maybe it's proof that you were capable of loving deeply, with your whole chest, without holding back, without needing guarantees. That kind of love changes you, and not everyone gets to experience it. So maybe the point was never to erase them. Maybe the point was never to forget. Maybe the point is to learn how to carry them quietly. Not as a ghost that haunts you, not as a wound that bleeds every time you remember, but as evidence that you lived, that you loved, that you felt something real enough to leave a permanent mark. Some people aren't meant to stay forever, but they stay with you in the way you love, in the way you remember, in the way your heart learned what was possible. And that doesn't mean you're broken, it means you were human. You know what hurts? Loving someone you know you can't have, and trying to act like it doesn't destroy you a little more every day. It's a strange kind of heartbreak, because they never rejected you, they never pushed you away, they never promised you anything, but your heart attached itself anyway, quietly, slowly, until suddenly everything started to revolve around them. It's like holding your breath underwater. At first it looks peaceful, but the longer you stay, the more it starts to ache in places you can't even describe. You know you should come up for air, you know staying hurts, but for some reason you'd rather drown than let go, and you start pretending you're okay with being just friends. Pretending the little moments don't matter as much as they do. Pretending your heart doesn't drop when they talk about someone else, or when they text you back just a little too casually. The kind of pain that doesn't scream, it just sits in your chest, heavy and quiet, because you can't be mad at them. They didn't choose you, but they never asked you to choose them either, and somehow that hurts even more. You start questioning yourself. Why wasn't I enough? What do they want that I don't have? What am I missing? And the truth is, nothing. There's nothing wrong with you. They just weren't the person meant to see you the way you deserved. But still, you stay. You care. You hold on to every small moment like it means something. You choose them even when you know you shouldn't, because letting go feels impossible, and loving them, even silently, still feels better than pretending you don't feel anything at all. And maybe one day it won't hurt like this. Maybe one day you'll look back and realize you were never asking for too much. You were just asking the wrong person, but for now, yeah, loving someone you can't have is its own kind of heartbreak, and it changes you in ways you don't fully understand until it's finally over. You're the punching bag in the friend group, the one they always pick on for no reason, the one who takes every joke, every insult, every comment, and somehow you're expected to just laugh it off. No matter what you do, it's a lose-lose. If you're loud, they tell you to shut up. If you're quiet, they clown you for being antisocial. You could sit there and say nothing, and they'd still find a way to turn you into the joke. They comment on your body, your voice, the way you exist. Too big, too skinny, too awkward, too quiet, too much. It's always something. And what hurts the most is when they say, relax, it's just jokes. But here's the truth. Anything done over and over stops being funny. Eventually, it just starts to hurt. You know it hurts because you've thought about cutting them off. You've replayed it in your head, but you don't do it because being the punching bag with friends feels safer than being alone without them. That's the part nobody talks about. How lonely it feels to choose disrespect just so you don't have to sit by yourself. But real friends don't need one person to constantly take all the hits. Talking shit is normal, yeah, but it should be spread evenly. Everyone should be able to take it. Everyone should be equal. If all the jokes land on you, that's not friendship. That's a target. So if you're the one always taking the blows, always swallowing it, always pretending you're fine, you need to hear this. Cut them off, not out of anger, out of self-respect, because happiness isn't waiting for you where you're constantly being torn down. It's waiting for you the moment you finally choose yourself. We all have that one friend that we're starting to hate, and it feels weird even saying that out loud because you don't want to hate them. This is someone you laughed with, grew up with, shared memories with, but lately, something feels off. It's not one big thing. It's a bunch of small things that keep stacking up until you can't ignore them anymore. The slick comments, the backhanded compliments, the weird energy whenever something good happens to you. Every time you hit a milestone in life, they find a way to downplay it. They don't celebrate you, they minimize it. You pass a class, get a new opportunity, level up in any way, and instead of being proud, they brush it off. The class wasn't even hard. Anybody could have done that. It's not that serious. Meanwhile, they weren't even in your shoes. They don't know what it took for you to get there. And what really messes with your head is that you never saw it as competition. You always thought y'all were equals. You never looked at them like you were better. You never tried to one-up them. You were just moving through life trying to grow, but somewhere along the way they started comparing. Everything became a scoreboard. Everything became a measurement. And suddenly, it felt like they needed you to lose for them to feel okay about themselves. At first you told yourself it was jokes, just banter, just bro humor. But then the tone changed. The jokes started sounding bitter. The laughter stopped reaching their eyes. You started hearing envy underneath the words. And once you hear it, you can't unhear it. You notice how quiet they get when other people congratulate you. How they never hype you the way you hype them. How they disappear when you need support, but reappear the moment you mess up. And that's when it really hits you. This person wouldn't do half of what you've done for them. You've shown up. You've defended them. You've celebrated their wins like they were your own. But they're watching from the background, waiting. Not for you to succeed, but for you to slip. And that's a scary realization, because a friend who secretly wants to see you fail isn't a friend, they're a snake. You're not crazy for feeling this way, you're not overthinking, you're just outgrowing them. And outgrowing someone hurts because it forces you to accept that not everyone is meant to come with you to the next version of your life. You don't need fake support. You don't need hidden resentment. You don't need someone clapping with one hand while hoping you fall with the other. Because when the moment is right, when you're vulnerable, when you're down bad, that's when people like this strike, and the damage they do doesn't heal easily. So if you've been feeling this shift, trust it. Distance isn't betrayal, protecting your peace isn't disloyalty, and walking away from hidden hate is self-respect. Not everyone who starts with you is meant to finish with you, and that's okay. What about my feelings? It's crazy. I can show up for everyone, I can listen, support, stay up late talking them through their problems, be the one who holds everything together. But the second it's my turn, everything goes silent. Like my emotions suddenly don't matter as much. Like I'm supposed to be the strong one all the time. The one who can handle it. The one who never needs anything back. Everyone sees the protector, but no one sees the person breaking behind the sword. And somewhere along the way, I became that person too. The one who says, I'm fine, even when I'm not. The one who smiles, even when something in me is falling apart. Not because I want to hide it, but because explaining myself feels like a burden. Because I'm scared that if I finally open up, people will think I'm too much. And maybe that's my fault. Maybe I taught everyone that I'm the one who never needs help, that I'm the one who always knows what to do, that I can hold all their weight without ever needing someone to carry mine. But the truth is, even the strong get tired. Even the ones who never complain still hope someone will look at them and say, "Are you okay? Really okay?" It hurts when the same people you've held up for years don't show up for you in the same way. Not because you want them to solve your problems, because you want to know your feelings matter too. Sometimes I don't want advice. Sometimes I don't need a solution. Sometimes I just want someone to sit with me and say, I get it, that sounds heavy. I'm here because my feelings are real, they're valid, and I'm finally learning that I don't need someone else to give me permission to feel them. I don't have to pretend to be unbreakable just because I've been the strong one for so long. The person who's there for everyone else deserves someone who will check on them too. It's strange how people don't really care about how you're feeling until you start acting different. You can be struggling quietly for weeks, even months, and nobody notices. You still show up, you still smile, you still say, I'm good, even when you're not. You laugh at jokes you don't even hear. You hold conversations while your mind is somewhere else entirely. You keep being the strong one, the chill one, the reliable one everyone counts on. And that becomes your role. The person who's always fine, always understanding, always there. But the moment your energy shifts, the moment you take longer to reply, the moment you stop forcing yourself to show up the same way, now suddenly everyone notices. What's wrong? Why are you acting different? But let's be honest. They're not asking because they care. They're asking because you stopped being convenient, because you stopped playing the part they were comfortable with. What hurts the most is knowing you were hoping someone would notice before it got to that point, before you had to pull back, before you had to protect yourself, but they didn't, because most people don't listen to silence. They only react to distance. They don't see you drowning when you're still smiling. They only care once you stop swimming for them. And that's when you realize the truth. People don't miss you when you're struggling. They miss you when your absence disrupts their life. So don't feel guilty for pulling back. Don't apologize for choosing peace. You're not cold. You're not acting funny. You're just tired. Tired of being the one who checks in. Tired of being strong for everyone else. Tired of people only noticing your worth once you stop giving them access to it. Let go of the people who only want the best parts of you. I've always been lonely. Not the kind of lonely where you just don't have plans for the weekend. I'm talking about that quiet, heavy loneliness that follows you around everywhere. In school, at home, in public. The kind that makes you feel invisible even when people are all around you. I can't remember the last time I got a text just to talk. Not because someone needed something, just because they wanted to hear from me. My phone barely lights up anymore, and honestly, I've stopped expecting it to. I used to think something was wrong with me, that maybe I was too awkward, too boring, too quiet, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized I've always been this way. I was the kid who sat at the edge of the lunch table, who blended in with the noise but never really belonged to it. I remember watching groups of friends laughing, sharing snacks, planning after school hangouts, and thinking, how do they make it look so easy? Because for me, every conversation felt like an audition. Every word I said was rehearsed, every laugh felt forced. I wanted to be liked so badly that I forgot how to just be, and the truth is, I think people could sense that. They could tell I wasn't comfortable with myself. And when you don't love who you are, people pick up on it. So they kept their distance, and I blamed myself. I'd go home and replay every moment. Why did I say that? Why did I sound so weird? Why can't I just act normal? That kind kind of thinking eats at you. It makes you feel smaller every single day, and slowly you start pulling away. You stop trying, you stop talking, until one day you realize you've built an entire life around your loneliness. You convince yourself you're fine, that you like being alone. You scroll through social media, watch people post stories with their friends, and tell yourself you don't care, but you do. You care so much that it hurts. You start wondering if maybe people are just built differently, some made for connection and others made to sit quietly in the background. But then something strange happens. One day you catch someone smiling at you in class, or you share a laugh at work, and for just a second it feels like the world remembers you exist. That small moment, the tiny spark, makes you realize how much you've been craving it, because we all want to be seen. I remember being 15, sitting in my room at night, watching the light from my phone fade away after hours of silence. I told myself that no one cared, but deep down, I just wanted one message, one person to ask, "Are you okay?" I used to hug my pillow and pretend it was someone who actually cared. It sounds sad when you say it out loud, but when you've gone years feeling unseen, you start to make up your own comfort. That kind of loneliness changes you. It makes you overthink every friendship you've ever had. It makes you scared to reach out because you don't want to be a burden. It makes you wonder if you're even worth knowing. But what I didn't realize back then is that connection isn't about being the funniest or the most interesting or the loudest. It's about being honest. People don't bond over perfection. They bond over pain, over shared silence, over the feeling of you too. When I started opening up, really opening up, people began to respond differently. When I told someone I felt lonely instead of laughing, they said me too. And that's when it clicked. I wasn't the only one feeling this way. Everyone's lonely. Some people are just better at hiding it. The truth is, loneliness doesn't mean no one loves you. It just means you haven't found the right people yet. The ones who understand that silence doesn't always mean you're mad, that you don't always have to talk to feel connected. The ones who stay when you disappear for a while, who notice your absence without blaming you for it. I started finding people like that when I was around 18 or 19. It wasn't overnight. It took small steps. Saying yes to an invite I'd normally decline, asking someone how their day was and actually listening to the answer. I had to force myself into discomfort, but slowly I realized something. People weren't avoiding me. I was avoiding them. I was so scared of rejection that I rejected everyone first. And when I stopped doing that, and when I started showing up as myself, awkward pauses and all, people started to stay. It made me understand something powerful. Being alone doesn't mean you're unlovable. It means you're preparing, because when you finally do meet real people, the ones who actually listen, the ones who see you, you'll value them more than anything. You'll know what it's like to miss connection, and that's what makes you treat it right when you finally have it. Sometimes I still feel that loneliness. I think everyone does, but I don't fear it anymore, because now I know it's not permanent. It's just a reminder that I care. Why do you keep chasing someone who keeps showing you the same outcome? At some point, you have to pause and really ask yourself that question. Not from a place of anger, not from a place of judgment, but from a place of honesty, because deep down you already know the answer. You're not chasing them because they want you. You're chasing them because you're hoping they eventually will, and that hope can be dangerous when it's built on nothing but mixed signals and empty gestures. If someone truly wanted you, you wouldn't feel confused all the time. You wouldn't be constantly questioning where you stand. You wouldn't be overanalyzing every delayed reply or short message, wondering what you did wrong. Interest doesn't hide. Effort doesn't disappear. People make time for what they care about. A lot of the time, the person you're chasing doesn't actually want a relationship with you. They want the attention. They want to feel desired. They like knowing someone is thinking about them, checking on them, choosing them. But that doesn't mean they're choosing you back. And that's a hard truth to accept, especially when you've already invested your emotions. The more you chase, the more power you give away. You start bending your boundaries. You start lowering your standards. You start accepting behavior you would never tolerate from someone you weren't emotionally attached to. And slowly, without even realizing it, you teach them that they don't have to show up for you to keep you around. Self-respect isn't about being cold or heartless. It's about knowing when to stop pouring into a cup that's never going to fill you back up. It's about recognizing that your time, your energy, and your feelings are valuable. They are not meant to be handed out to someone who only shows interest when it's convenient for them. When you stop texting first, when you stop checking to see if they viewed your story, when you stop making excuses for their lack of effort, something powerful happens. You create space for clarity, space for peace, space for someone who won't make you feel like you have to compete for basic attention. Walking away doesn't mean you didn't care. It means you finally cared about yourself enough to stop chasing someone who was never running toward you in the first place. You don't lose anything by choosing yourself. The only thing you lose is the illusion that one day they might change. Respect yourself enough to stop chasing. The right person will never need to be convinced to choose you. Every girl needs to understand this, and I mean really understand it. If you have a man in your life who is willing to do anything for you, a man who loves you unconditionally, who shows up without being asked, who takes the extra step even when he's tired, even when he's stressed, even when life isn't going his way, that is not normal. That is rare. That is something most people spend their entire lives searching for and never find. A man like that doesn't just come around every relationship. You get that man once, maybe twice in your entire lifetime if you're lucky. And if you decide to let him go, if you push him away, if you take him for granted, you didn't just lose a relationship. You fumbled something special in ways you won't fully understand until it's gone. We're living in a generation where a lot of guys are completely fed up with love. They've been lied to, cheated on, emotionally drained, and replaced like they were nothing. So now they move different. They become colder, they become nonchalant, they stop loving the way they used to because every time they did, it cost them something. Not because they wanted to hurt anyone, but because that's what the world taught them to do, just to survive. So when you find a man who still loves deeply, who still cares, who still communicates instead of shutting down, who doesn't disappear when things get hard, who doesn't make you question where you stand, you need to understand how rare that really is. Some people don't know how to handle good because they've never been shown good before. Chaos feels normal to them. Peace feels boring. Stability feels unfamiliar. So when something healthy finally shows up, they self-sabotage it, they test it, they disrespect it, they assume it's replaceable. And don't get it twisted. Guys do this too. But if you have a good man, don't play with that blessing. Don't think you can treat him however you want and he'll always stay. Don't think his patience is unlimited. Don't think his heart won't eventually get tired. Pull the petty shit to the side. Learn how to grow. Learn how to communicate instead of argue. Pay attention to the small things he does because those small things are how he shows his love. Be in tune with his emotions the same way he's in tune with yours. If he listens to you, if he protects your heart, if he shows effort without excuses, if he chooses you every day even when it's not easy, don't lose him thinking you'll just find another one like him. Because men like that are rare as fuck. And once they're gone, they don't come back the same. So be good to bro because honestly, he deserves it. The worst combination you can be is a clingy person who also overthinks everything. Because your heart and your mind are never on the same team. Your heart just wants closeness. It wants to be next to them, wants to hold them, hug them, feel their presence, fall asleep next to them, talk about nothing, do everything together. You don't want space, you want connection, but your mind never shuts up. Your mind is constantly running scenarios you never asked for. What if I'm doing too much? What if I'm annoying her? What if she needs space and I'm suffocating her? What if she hasn't texted back because she's tired of me? So you're stuck in this loop where you want to be close, but you're scared that wanting closeness is the very thing that might push her away. You want to text her, but you stare at the screen for 10 minutes before sending it. You want to call her, but you stop yourself because you don't want to seem needy. You want to ask her to hang out, but you tell yourself, nah, I already saw her yesterday. Don't do too much. And that's the part nobody talks about. Being clingy doesn't mean you're insecure. It doesn't mean you're weak. It usually just means you love deeply. But when you overthink on top of that, love starts to feel like walking on eggshells. Every little thing becomes something you analyze. Her tone, her response time, the way she said goodnight, the way she didn't say it the same way she did before. And your mind takes that tiny detail and turns it into a full-blown story about how you're about to lose her, so you pull back. Not because you want to, but because you're scared. You start acting less like yourself. You become quieter. You stop being affectionate the way you naturally are. You stop saying what you feel in the moment. And the crazy part is the thing you're afraid of becoming too much slowly turns into you becoming too little. You convince yourself distance is safer than vulnerability, that silence is better than risking rejection, that holding back is better than being honest. But here's the truth you need to hear. If she chose you knowing how you are, then you being yourself is not the problem. She didn't accidentally end up with you. She saw you. She learned you. She felt your energy, and she still stayed. Every thought in your head is not a fact. Just because your mind says something doesn't make it true. Your mind is trying to protect you from pain, but sometimes it protects you so hard that it sabotages the very thing you care about. Love isn't about constantly shrinking yourself so someone doesn't leave. Real love isn't built on fear. If someone truly wants you, your affection won't scare them away. Your presence won't be a burden. Your desire to be close won't be too much, and if someone makes you feel like it is, then the problem was never your heart. You don't need to punish yourself for loving loudly. You don't need to silence your feelings just to seem cooler. You don't need to turn cold to protect yourself. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do as an overthinker is trust that not every good thing is about to disappear. Let yourself love the way you love. Let yourself be close. Let yourself feel. Because the right person won't see your clinginess as a flaw. They'll see it as care, as effort, as love. And the moment you stop fighting who you are, love stops feeling like a constant battle inside your head. Caring deeply for someone who was never interested in you is one of the fastest ways to lose yourself. It's exhausting in a way people don't talk about enough. You keep trying, hoping something will change, convincing yourself that if you give a little more, love a little harder, or wait a little longer, it'll finally turn into something real. But the truth is, nothing grows where there's no effort on the other side. Think about the pattern. They don't reach out first. They take hours, sometimes days, to respond. Conversations feel forced or short. Plans rarely happen. And yet you're still showing up emotionally, investing time, and holding space for someone who isn't doing the same for you. That imbalance slowly wears you down. Not all at once, but quietly. Until one day you realize you've been pouring into a cup that was never meant to be filled. What hurts the most isn't that it didn't work out. It's the way it makes you question your worth. You start wondering why you weren't enough or what you could have done differently, but the reality is your value was never the issue. Interest can't be forced, and connection can't be created by effort alone. Staying where you're not wanted teaches your mind to accept less than you deserve. It makes rejection feel familiar. It turns hope into habit and disappointment into routine, and over time it chips away at the way you see yourself. That's why walking away isn't giving up, it's choosing to protect your peace. If someone doesn't want you, believe them, not because you're lacking, but because the right person won't make you question where you stand. They won't leave you guessing. They won't make affection feel like a reward you have to earn. Letting go doesn't mean it didn't matter. It means you're finally allowing yourself to move towards something that does. Stop holding on to potential that only exists in your head. Stop trying to read meaning into small gestures or brief moments of attention. Consistency is clarity, and when you finally choose to step back, you'll notice something important. Your energy returns, your confidence rebuilds. You remember who you were before you started shrinking yourself to fit into someone else's indifference. Choose the path that leads you to someone who wants you without hesitation. Choose yourself. And if you can still listen, even when it's hard, there's still a way back. It's letting the distance grow so wide that you forget how to listen to the person you once loved without effort. Because the real loss isn't the argument, it's I'm still here. I still care. Let's figure this out together. And the truth is, sometimes the most powerful thing you can say isn't another argument. Love survives not because people never argue, but because at some point they choose understanding over being right. Sometimes the only way back to each other is slowing down and actually hearing what's being said beneath the anger. Because love isn't about who wins, it's about who's willing to listen even when it's uncomfortable, even when it hurts your pride, even when silence feels easier. You have to stop fighting each other and start fighting for the version of us that existed before ego took over. Not by winning the argument, not by proving your point harder, not by keeping score of who's hurt who more. If you still care, if there's even a small part of you that hopes things can get better, then something has to change. And now both of you are stuck arguing through the pain instead of talking through it. You're not angry, you're hurting, but the pain comes out sideways. Instead of saying, I'm scared of losing you, you argue over something small that doesn't even matter. Instead of saying, I feel ignored, you shut down. So instead of saying, that hurt me, you raise your voice. Especially as a man, you were probably never taught how to communicate hurt without sounding cold, defensive, or angry. I don't want to lose you. That storm where both people are tired, emotionally drained, misunderstood, and too hurt to say the one thing that actually matters. Every real connection goes through this phase. But here's the part nobody really talks about. You just want to feel seen again. You want to feel like your feelings still matter, like the version of you that made them laugh, that made them feel safe, that made them choose you is still there, somewhere underneath all this tension. You don't want to argue, you don't want to push them away, you don't want to feel distant from someone who used to feel like home. What hurts the most is that deep down, neither of you actually wants this. Now it feels like every conversation is a competition. You're fighting to be heard, they're fighting to be right, and while you're both swinging, nobody's actually winning. You miss when things were easy, when you could sit in silence together and it didn't feel awkward, when laughing came naturally, when being around each other felt safe, not stressful, and you miss how it used to be. You look at each other and it doesn't feel soft anymore, it feels tense, like you're walking on eggshells trying not to set the other person off. It's about tone, it's about who said what, who felt disrespected, who's wrong, who needs to apologize first. The texts start feeling colder, shorter, dry. Calls don't last as long anymore, and when you do talk, it's not about love, it's not about missing each other, it's not even about how your day went. Like, you could say something as simple as, "Good morning," and by the end of the conversation, it's, "Why are you talking to me like that?" Or, "What's your problem?" You ever reach that point in a relationship where everything somehow turns into an argument? I'm romantic, I believe in effort, in choosing someone daily, in love that feels intentional, not accidental, but I'm not naive anymore. I don't confuse chemistry with commitment. I don't mistake words for consistency. I don't fall in love with potential and ignore reality to protect the fantasy. That version of me is gone. Being romantic doesn't mean I overlook red flags. It doesn't mean I excuse disrespect. It doesn't mean I stay just because I feel deeply. It means I love with awareness now. I still want connection, still want intimacy, still want something real, but I'm no longer willing to sacrifice my peace just to keep a feeling alive. I know the difference now between someone who feels good and someone who is good for me. I know the difference between affection and effort, between attention and intention, and I don't chase illusions anymore. I won't romanticize someone who can't show up consistently. I won't soften the truth to protect a story I wanted to believe in. I can be tender and still have boundaries, hopeful and still realistic. Romantic doesn't mean blind. It means I care deeply, but I pay attention. And this time I don't fall in love at the expense of myself. I used to think being romantic meant enduring, staying longer than I should, giving the benefit of the doubt even when doubt was all I felt, believing that love meant patience no matter the cost. That's where it went wrong. I mistook tolerance for depth. I confused hope with commitment. I kept softening my boundaries to protect a version of love that wasn't protecting me. That wasn't romance, that was self-abandonment. Being romantic doesn't mean I ignore patterns. It doesn't mean I wait for someone to become who they promise to be. It means I listen when actions contradict words. It means I leave when effort fades. It means I don't negotiate respect just to keep a connection alive. I still believe in love that's big, in feelings that are deep, in choosing someone with intention. But now, romance has standards. I won't pour into uncertainty. I won't romanticize inconsistency. I won't stay where I feel anxious and call it passion. Romantic love should feel safe enough to be honest, stable enough to be real, mutual enough to last, and if it isn't, I don't try to fix it anymore. Because I can be romantic without being reckless with my heart. Being romantic but not naive changes how you choose people from the very beginning. You don't rush connection anymore. You don't get swept up by intensity. You don't confuse attention with alignment. You let things unfold. You watch how someone shows up when it's inconvenient, how they communicate when things are unclear, how they act when they don't get their way. Because attraction is easy, consistency is not. You stop falling for the idea of someone and start paying attention to how they actually treat you. Do they follow through? Do they respect your time? Do they show curiosity about your inner world? Or just enjoy how you make them feel? Being romantic doesn't mean you stop feeling sparks. It means sparks aren't enough anymore. You want safety with the spark, effort with the chemistry, clarity with the feelings, so you slow down, not because you're scared, but because you value yourself too much to rush into something unproven. You let people reveal who they are without trying to fill in the gaps for them. And if something feels off, you don't romanticize it. You listen, because the right connection won't need you to ignore yourself to keep it alive. Being romantic without being naive means I still believe in love. I just don't chase it blindly anymore. I don't force connections. I don't convince people to choose me. I don't don't stay where effort feels one-sided and call it patience. I let love meet me where I am. If someone wants me, I won't have to guess. If someone cares, I won't have to ask repeatedly. If something is real, it won't require me to ignore my instincts. I still believe in late-night talks, in choosing each other, in building something meaningful, but I don't sacrifice clarity for intensity anymore. I've learned that love isn't proven by how much you're willing to endure. It's proven by how safe you feel being yourself without shrinking, performing, or waiting. So now I don't rush toward feelings just because they're strong. I let actions catch up to words. I let time reveal truth. I let consistency do the convincing. And if someone can't meet me there, I don't make it mean love is dead. I just understand that not every connection is meant to last. I can still be soft, still hopeful, still romantic. I'm just no longer willing to lose myself for the sake of a feeling. Being romantic, not naive, changed what I tolerate. I don't excuse inconsistency anymore. I don't sit with confusion and call it giving things time. I don't ignore the feeling that something is off just because I want it to work. Before, I'd stay and explain. I'd adjust. I'd wait. Now, I observe. If effort fades, I notice. If respect slips, I address it once. If nothing changes, I leave. Not angrily, not dramatically, just clearly. I don't feel guilty walking away from things that don't align anymore, because walking away isn't punishment, it's protection. I used to think romance meant holding on. Now I know it also means knowing when to let go. I still care deeply, still feel intensely, still believe in choosing someone with intention, but I won't romanticize potential at the expense of reality. I won't stay where I feel anxious, unseen, or unsure of my place. Romance without boundaries is just hope with no direction. And now, my heart has standards, not walls, standards. Being romantic and grounded makes love feel quieter than I expected. There's no chaos, no guessing games, no emotional roller coaster disguised as passion. And at first that felt strange. I was used to intensity proving something, used to anxiety meaning I cared, used to confusion keeping me invested. But that wasn't depth, that was instability. Now, romance feels calm. It looks like consistency. It sounds like clear communication. It feels like not having to overthink where I stand. There's still excitement. It's just not fueled by uncertainty. I don't need constant reassurance anymore. I don't need dramatic gestures to feel chosen. I don't need to be chased to feel wanted. Because when something is real, it doesn't keep you on edge. Being romantic doesn't mean I crave fireworks every moment. It means I value safety with the spark, peace with the passion, connection that doesn't cost me my balance. And the biggest shift, I don't mistake calm for boredom anymore. I understand now that love doesn't have to be loud to be meaningful. Sometimes the most romantic thing is feeling secure enough to just be yourself. Being romantic, not naive, changed how I communicate my needs. I don't hint anymore. I don't water things down to avoid being too much. I don't stay silent hoping someone will just figure it out. I say what I need, not aggressively, not defensively, just honestly, because needing clarity isn't pressure. Needing consistency isn't insecurity. Needing effort isn't asking for the world, it's asking for alignment. Before, I was scared that speaking up would push people away, that if I asked for more, I'd lose what I had. Now I understand something important. If honesty scares someone off, they were never meant to stay. I don't over-explain myself anymore. I don't apologize for having standards. I don't negotiate my needs to make someone comfortable. Romance doesn't mean silence. It means trusting that the right person won't feel threatened by clear communication. They won't call it drama. They won't call it too much. They won't make you feel guilty for wanting to feel secure. They'll listen, they'll respond, they'll meet you where you are. And if they don't, I don't take it personally, because being romantic, not naive, means I'd rather be understood slowly than misunderstood forever. Being romantic with boundaries filters people out quietly. You don't have to test anyone, you don't have to interrogate intentions, you don't have to force clarity. You just stay consistent with who you are. You show up honestly. You communicate clearly. You don't overgive to keep someone interested, and that alone does the work. People who only wanted attention get bored. People who thrived on ambiguity get uncomfortable. People who wanted access without effort slowly fade, and you let them, not because you stopped caring, but because you stopped chasing. Being romantic, not naive, means you don't audition for love anymore. You don't prove your worth. You don't compete for consistency. You don't bend yourself to be easier to choose. You let people meet you where you stand, and the ones who can't, they remove themselves. That used to scare you. Now it reassures you, because the right connection won't need you to lower your standards to keep it alive. It will rise to meet them. And the most romantic thing about that, you don't have to lose yourself to find love anymore. I still believe in love. That part never left. What changed is who I trust first. I believe in myself now. I trust my intuition when something feels off. I trust my boundaries when they need to be held. I trust my heart without handing it over blindly. Before, I believed love required risk at any cost, that you had to jump first and hope someone caught you. Now I know better. Real love doesn't ask you to abandon yourself. It doesn't punish you for being honest. It doesn't require you to doubt your worth to keep it alive. Being romantic, not naive, means I still dream. I just don't disappear into the dream. I don't ignore red flags to protect the fantasy. I don't silence my needs to keep someone comfortable. I don't romanticize suffering and call it devotion. I let love add to my life, not destabilize it. And the biggest shift of all, I don't fear losing love anymore the way I used to, because I know I won't lose myself trying to keep it. That confidence didn't come from love finding me. It came from me finally standing with myself. Being romantic, not naive, means I didn't lose my softness. I refined it. I still believe in love that's intentional, in effort that's mutual, in choosing someone without hesitation or games, but I no longer confuse love with endurance. I won't stay where I feel uncertain. I won't fight for clarity. I won't romanticize someone's potential while ignoring how they treat me now. Romance isn't blind faith anymore. It's awareness. It's knowing that feelings matter, but actions matter more. That chemistry is exciting, but consistency is what lasts. That love shouldn't cost you your peace, your voice, or yourself. I still want something real. I still want depth. I still want connection that feels meaningful. I just won't abandon myself to get it. If someone meets me with honesty, I open my heart. If they meet me with effort, I lean in. If they meet me halfway, I walk the rest with them. And if they don't, I don't force it. I don't chase it. I don't grieve what was never aligned. Because being romantic doesn't mean I accept less. It means I know exactly what kind of love I want. And I'm patient enough to wait for something that doesn't ask me to be smaller, quieter, or less aware. I'm still a romantic. I just finally learned how to protect my heart without closing it. And that's the difference. They say your second love hits the deepest. And at first I didn't believe that. I thought nothing could touch the intensity of the first one. The first love is loud. It's reckless. It's the kind of love that makes you believe everything will work out just because you feel it so strongly. You fall without thinking. You trust without fear. You don't even know what heartbreak really is yet, so you give everything freely. But the second love comes after reality has already introduced itself. It comes after disappointment, after the nights where you questioned your worth, after you learned that love doesn't always stay no matter how hard you try. So this time, you don't rush, you don't dive in head first, you hesitate, you analyze, you protect your heart like it's something fragile, because now you know it is, and that's what makes the second love different. You don't love blindly anymore, you love intentionally, you pay attention to effort, to consistency, to how someone treats you when it's inconvenient, not just when it's easy. You're still scared, but you're braver in a quieter way. You open up slowly, piece by piece, hoping you won't regret it again. And somehow, it still means more than you expected, because after being broken once, feeling safe again hits different. Feeling chosen without having to beg hits different. Being loved without chaos feels almost unfamiliar at first. You keep waiting for the catch. For the moment it all falls apart, but it doesn't, at least not right away. The second love isn't about butterflies in your stomach. It's about calm in your chest. It's about being understood without having to explain yourself over and over. It's about not feeling anxious when your phone is quiet. It's about knowing where you stand. It's about realizing that love doesn't have to hurt to be real. And even if the second love doesn't last forever, it leaves a different kind of mark. It teaches you what love is supposed to feel like. It shows you that you can love deeply without losing yourself, that you can stay soft without being naive, that healing doesn't mean closing your heart, it means choosing better. Your first love changes you, but your second love reminds you why you didn't give up on love in the first place. And that's why it hurts deeper, because this time you knew what you were risking and you loved anyway. What people don't tell you is that the second love doesn't just affect your heart, it reshapes the way you see everything. You're not the same person you were the first time you fell in love. You're more aware now, more cautious. You've seen how quickly things can change, how someone can promise forever and still walk away. So you love with your eyes open this time. You notice the small things, the tone shifts, the effort levels, the moments where silence says more than words ever could. You're not naive anymore, but you're not closed off either. And that's the dangerous balance, because part of you is still hopeful, still wanting to believe that this time will be different, that maybe this love will be the one that stays. And because you're loving with intention now, when it starts to slip, you feel it immediately. The second love hurts because you don't get blindsided. You see it coming. You sense the distance before it's spoken. You feel the warmth fade before it's gone. You recognize the patterns because you've lived them before, and yet you still stay longer than you should. Not because you're desperate, but because you understand love better now. You know relationships aren't perfect. You know people struggle. You try to be patient. You try to communicate. You try to fix instead of flee. That's what makes it cut deeper when it ends. Because you didn't love blindly. You loved consciously. You loved knowing the risk. The second love doesn't shatter you the way the first one does. It doesn't leave you confused about what went wrong. Instead, it leaves you quietly exhausted. You don't cry as loudly. You don't fall apart as dramatically. You just sit with this heavy realization that sometimes, even when you do things the right way, love can still end. And that's a different kind of pain. It's the pain of knowing you grew, healed, and tried again, and still didn't get the ending you hoped for. But it's also the pain that proves how strong you've become, because even after everything, you are still capable of opening your heart again. That matters more than you think. The second love stays with you in quieter ways, not as chaos, not as obsession, but as reflection. It makes you look at yourself differently, at the way you love, at the boundaries you set, at the parts of you that grew stronger and the parts that are still tender. You don't replay every moment wondering what you did wrong like the first time. Instead, you replay moments wondering how something that felt so healthy could still slip through your fingers. And that's when it hits you. Love isn't a guarantee. Effort doesn't come with insurance. Doing your best doesn't mean you'll always get to keep what you care about. That realization hurts, but it also matures you. You stop romanticizing pain. You stop thinking love has to be hard to be meaningful. You stop chasing people who can't meet you where you are. The second love teaches you discernment. It teaches you that chemistry isn't enough, that timing matters, that two good people can still be wrong for each other in that moment of life. And accepting that is one of the hardest lessons there is. You don't come out of it bitter, at least not if you're honest with yourself. You come out clearer. You know what you want now, what you won't tolerate, what you deserve without needing to explain it to anyone. And even though it didn't last, it didn't fail, it served its purpose. It showed you that love can feel safe, that connection can be calm, that you don't have to lose yourself to be close to someone. The second love doesn't destroy your belief in love, it refines it. It strips away the fantasy and leaves you with truth. And truth, even when it hurts, is always better than illusion. Because now, when love comes again, and it will. You won't be chasing it, you'll be choosing it. What makes the second love linger is how close it came to being right. It wasn't reckless, it wasn't built on illusion. It felt grounded, like something you could grow into instead of something you were chasing, and that's why letting it go feels so unfair. You did the work this time. You showed up differently, you loved with awareness, and still it slipped away. That's the part nobody prepares you for. You start asking quieter questions. Not why wasn't I enough, but why wasn't this the right time? You realize that love isn't just about effort or intention. It's also about alignment, about two people being ready in the same season of life. And sometimes, no matter how real it feels, the timing just isn't there. The second love teaches you that endings don't always come from betrayal or lack of care. Sometimes they come from growth pulling people in different directions. From life demanding things one person is ready to give and the other isn't yet. And that kind of ending hurts because there's no villain to blame. You don't leave angry, you leave understanding, and that understanding weighs heavy. But here's the quiet truth. The second love doesn't close your heart, it strengthens it. It proves you're capable of loving again without losing yourself. It shows you that healing worked, that you didn't harden, that you didn't shut down. You took the risk again, knowing how badly it could hurt, and that courage matters because love isn't measured by how long it lasts. It's measured by how honestly it's given, and the second love is often the most honest version of you. Not perfect, not fearless, but real, and that's something no ending can take away. The second love changes how you carry yourself afterward. You don't walk away shattered, but you don't walk away untouched either. There's a quiet shift in you. You become softer in some places, stronger in others. You learn how to sit with loss without letting it turn into bitterness, and that balance takes time. You notice how you move differently now. You're slower to give access to your heart, but not closed. You're more honest about what you need, even if it risks someone leaving. You no longer stay silent just to keep the peace, because the second love taught you that losing yourself slowly is worse than losing someone quickly. You also learn that closure doesn't always come from a conversation. Sometimes it comes from acceptance, from realizing that you gave what you could with what you knew at the time, that both of you tried in the ways you knew how, and that an ending doesn't erase the good that existed. The memories don't hurt the same way anymore. They don't stab, they ache. And even that ache becomes familiar, manageable. It reminds you that you once felt safe with someone, and that means you can feel that way again. Maybe not with them, but with someone else, someday. The second love doesn't leave you afraid to love again. It leaves you prepared. You know what to look for now. You know the difference between attention and effort, between chemistry and compatibility, between wanting someone and being ready to build with them. And when love finds you again, because it will, you won't be chasing the feeling. You'll be recognizing calm, mutual, grounded, something that doesn't ask you to prove your worth or question your place. That's the quiet gift of the second love. It doesn't stay forever, but it stays with you in the way you love next. There's a moment after the second love ends where you realize you're not angry anymore. Not at them, not even at yourself. You're just tired. Tired in a way that only comes from caring deeply and trying your best. And that tiredness forces you to slow down and actually listen to yourself. You start asking different questions now. Not, how do I get them back? But why did I stay when I felt myself shrinking? You become more aware of the moments you ignored your intuition, the times your body knew before your heart was ready to admit it. And instead of beating yourself up for it, you start forgiving yourself for being human. The second love teaches you that loving someone doesn't mean abandoning yourself. That compromise shouldn't feel like self-erasure. That consistency matters more than intensity. And that someone can care about you deeply and still not be capable of loving you in the way you need. You also realize something else that's important. Just because a love ends doesn't mean it failed. Some connections are meant to show you a version of yourself you didn't know existed. A braver version, a more open version, a version that learned how to communicate, how to trust again, how to be vulnerable without losing control. And And that version of you doesn't disappear when the relationship ends. It stays. You carry it into every interaction after, into the boundaries you set, into the standards you keep, into the way you walk away sooner when something doesn't feel right instead of forcing yourself to stay. The second love doesn't break you. It refines you. It teaches you how to love without fantasy, without desperation, without fear running the show. And even though it didn't last, it proves something important, that you're capable of loving in a healthy way. And once you know that, you never really lose. After the second love, you stop romanticizing ending. You understand that sometimes things don't fall apart loudly. They fade, they change shape. They quietly reach a point where staying would mean forcing something that's no longer aligned. And accepting that takes more strength than holding on ever did. You learn how to grieve without dramatizing. You let yourself miss them without wishing to undo the ending. You don't demonize what you adjust to make letting go easier. You honor it for what it was, meaningful, imperfect, and real. That kind of honesty with yourself is growth. You also become more intentional with your energy. You don't over-explain your feelings to people who aren't listening. You don't overextend yourself to prove your worth. You save your softness for those who handle it with care. Because the second love taught you how valuable that softness actually is, and slowly, without forcing it, you start to feel whole again. Not because someone replaced them, but because you learned how to stand on your own with everything you gained from loving. You realize that love didn't take anything from you. It gave you clarity, depth, emotional intelligence you didn't have before. The second love doesn't leave you empty, it leaves you wiser. You understand now that love isn't about avoiding pain. It's about choosing something real, knowing it could hurt, and still showing up with honesty. And when you're able to do that without losing yourself, that's when love becomes something powerful instead of fragile. You're not the same person you were before them. You're better prepared for what comes next. The second love stays with you not as pain, but as proof that your heart didn't close after being hurt. Proof that you didn't let fear turn you cold. Proof that even after disappointment, you were still willing to try again. And that matters more than whether it lasts, because the goal was never to avoid heartbreak forever. The goal was to love without losing yourself. And the second love showed you that you could do that. You could be open without being reckless, vulnerable without being naive. You learned how to love with balance. And one day when love comes again, you'll feel the difference immediately. It won't feel rushed, it won't feel heavy, it won't feel like you're walking on eggshells or trying to prove your value. It'll feel mutual, steady, easy in a way that doesn't scare you. You won't be chasing a feeling anymore. You'll be choosing a person, and that's the quiet beauty of the second. It doesn't promise forever, it prepares you. It teaches you that love doesn't need to hurt to be meaningful, and that peace is just as powerful as passion. So if your second love didn't last, don't mourn it like a failure. See it for what it really was. A turning point, a lesson, a reminder that your heart is still capable of real connection. The first love opens your heart. The second love teaches it how to stay open. And whatever comes next, you'll be ready for. She chose him over me. And the crazy part is, it didn't happen in one moment. It happened slowly. At first it was small things. Her replies got shorter. Her attention started drifting. The way she used to look at me started changing. Not dramatically, just enough that something felt off. But when you love someone, you don't immediately assume the worst. You assume they're stressed, busy, tired. You give them the benefit of the doubt. So I stayed patient. I stayed consistent. I kept showing up the same way I always did. Because when I commit to someone, I don't suddenly change just because things get complicated. But what I didn't realize at the time was this. While I was trying to hold the relationship together, someone else was slowly stepping into it, not all at once. Just little by little, more conversations, more attention, more curiosity. And attention is powerful because attention turns into interest. Interest turns into emotional space, and emotional space turns into attachment. By the time I realized what was happening, it was already too late, because she didn't just choose him in a moment, she chose him through 100 small decisions. Every time she answered his message faster than mine, every time she gave him the version of her that used to be mine, every time she let his presence grow while mine slowly shrank. And the hardest part, I wasn't competing in a fair race, because I didn't even know there was a race. I thought we were building something together, but she was quietly deciding between two directions, and eventually, she chose his, not because I didn't care, not because I didn't try, but because somewhere along the way my presence became familiar, and his attention felt new, and novelty is powerful when someone isn't fully anchored anymore. So one day it became official, not dramatic, not explosive, just final. She chose him, and suddenly I went from being the person she talked to every day to someone watching from a distance, and that's a strange feeling. To realize that someone who once chose you completely can eventually choose someone else instead. The part people don't talk about when someone chooses someone else is the confusion. Not just the pain, the confusion, because your mind starts replaying everything, every conversation, every memory, every moment that felt real, and you start asking questions that don't have clear answers. Was she already talking to him while she was telling me she loved me? Did she start losing feelings months before I noticed? Was I fighting for something that had already quietly ended? Because when someone chooses another person, it doesn't just break your heart, it rewrites your memories. You start looking back at moments that once felt normal and wondering if they meant something else. That night she seemed distant. That time she smiled at her phone. That random argument that came out of nowhere. At the time, none of it seemed like a big deal, but after she chose him, everything starts connecting in ways you wish it didn't, and suddenly it feels like you were the last person to realize the relationship was already changing. That's the hardest part, feeling like you were still building something while the other person was slowly detaching from it, because while I was trying to fix things, she was deciding between two futures, one with me and one without me, and eventually she picked the one that didn't include me, and I'm not gonna lie, that hits your ego, it makes you question your value, you start comparing yourself to someone you've never even met. What does he have that I don't? Is he more exciting, more confident, more interesting? Did she get bored of me? Did I become too predictable? Your mind searches for reasons because your heart needs an explanation, but sometimes the truth is uncomfortable. Sometimes people don't leave because you weren't enough. Sometimes they leave because someone new made them feel something different, and different can be powerful when someone isn't fully grounded in what they already have, because new attention feels exciting, new conversations feel fresh, new people don't carry the history of arguments or mistakes, and that freshness can create the illusion of something better, but illusions don't show the full picture, they only show the beginning. Still, knowing that doesn't always make it easier, because when someone chooses someone else over you, it feels like a verdict, like a decision about your worth, but the reality is this, it wasn't a competition about who was better, it was a decision about who she felt more drawn to at that moment, and attraction, timing, and emotion are messy things, they don't always follow logic, so yeah, she chose him, and for a while that felt like proof that I lost. But over time I started realizing something important. Just because someone chooses a different path doesn't mean you weren't valuable. Sometimes it just means they weren't meant to stay on yours. The hardest part about her choosing him wasn't just losing her. It was realizing I couldn't compete with something I never saw coming, because I was focused on us. I wasn't looking around for other options. I wasn't measuring her against someone new. I wasn't wondering if someone else could replace her. I was invested fully. So when I found out she chose him, it felt like the ground shifted under something I thought was stable. And stability is something you don't question until it disappears. When things feel secure, you stop worrying about losing them. You assume the foundation is strong, But sometimes what feels strong to you is already cracking for someone else, and the scary part is you don't always see those cracks when they start forming, because they don't begin as huge problems. They begin quietly. Less excitement in conversations, less curiosity about your day, less emotional presence, tiny changes that seem harmless at first, but those small shifts slowly create emotional distance. And distance creates space, and space is where someone new can enter. I didn't realize how much space had formed between us until someone else filled it, and by the time I noticed, the emotional balance had already shifted, because attention changes people. When someone new shows interest, it creates a different kind of energy. New validation, new curiosity, new excitement. And if someone isn't fully anchored in what they already have, that new energy can start pulling them away. That's the part nobody warns you about. Sometimes relationships don't end because something terrible happened. Sometimes they end because someone new arrived at the wrong time. And suddenly what felt comfortable starts feeling routine. What felt stable starts feeling predictable, and predictability can feel boring to someone chasing excitement. But what hurts the most is realizing this. I never got the chance to compete fairly because I wasn't competing at all. I thought I was building something solid, while she was slowly deciding whether she still wanted it. And once someone starts questioning the connection, everything changes. Their energy changes, their priorities shift, their attention moves, and eventually their choice becomes clear. She chose him, and I was left trying to understand how something that once felt mutual could suddenly feel one-sided. After she chose him, something strange happened inside my head. At first it was anger, not loud anger, not the kind where you yell or send messages you regret. The quiet kind, the kind that makes you stare at the ceiling at night wondering how everything changed so fast. Because when someone chooses someone else over you, it feels like a judgment, like a decision about your value, and that's where your mind goes first. You start comparing yourself to someone you've never even met. Is he better than me? Does he make her laugh more? Does he understand her in ways I couldn't? Did she see something in him that she stopped seeing in me? Your brain starts building a version of this person that's somehow superior in every way. But the truth is, most of those comparisons are imaginary because you're not actually comparing yourself to him. You're comparing yourself to the idea of him, the version of him that exists in your mind, and that version always looks unbeatable because when you're hurt, your brain automatically assumes you lost to someone better, but relationships aren't competitions, they're choices, and choices aren't always logical. Sometimes people choose someone because the timing feels different. Sometimes they choose someone because the energy feels new. Sometimes they choose someone simply because they're in a different emotional place. None of that automatically means you are less valuable, but in the moment it definitely feels like it does, because rejection has a way of shrinking your confidence. It makes you forget who you were before the situation happened. Before she chose him, I knew exactly who I was. Someone loyal, someone consistent, someone who showed up even when things weren't easy. But when she chose him, for a while, it made me question all of that. It made me wonder if loyalty was boring, if consistency was predictable, if stability was something she stopped appreciating. And those thoughts are dangerous, because when someone leaves you for someone else, the easiest trap to fall into is believing you weren't enough. But the truth is this: someone choosing a different person doesn't erase the way you loved them. It doesn't erase the effort you gave. It doesn't erase the value you brought to the relationship. It only means one thing. At that moment in her life, she felt pulled in a different direction. Yeah, that hurts, because nobody wants to be the direction someone walks away from. But sometimes the person who walks away is simply walking towards something they think they need to experience, and that doesn't automatically mean you were the wrong person. Sometimes it just means you weren't the final chapter in their story. after a while, the anger fades. Not completely, but enough that something else starts replacing it. Reflection. Because once the shock of being replaced settles, you start looking back at the relationship differently. You stop asking, why did she choose him? And you start asking something more honest. When did she start drifting away? Because choices like that rarely happen overnight. They build slowly, little emotional shifts that you barely notice in the moment, conversations that feel shorter, moments that feel less connected, energy that feels slightly different. At first you ignore it, because when you love someone, your instinct isn't to assume the worst. Your instinct is to trust them. So when something feels off, you tell yourself it's temporary. Maybe she's stressed, maybe she's tired, maybe she just needs space. But sometimes those small changes aren't temporary. Sometimes they're the early signs that someone's feelings are shifting. And the hardest part about that realization is this: you can be doing everything right, and someone can still start emotionally leaving. I showed up the same way I always did. I was consistent, I listened, I tried to support her when things got hard. But sometimes relationships don't end because someone did something wrong. Sometimes they end because someone starts feeling something different. And feelings don't always follow logic. That's the uncomfortable truth. Because when someone chooses someone else, it feels like a failure. Like you must have done something wrong. But relationships aren't math equations. You can do everything right and still lose someone who simply felt pulled in another direction. And that's the part that takes the longest to accept, because your mind keeps looking for a mistake you could fix, a moment you could redo, a conversation you could handle differently. But sometimes there isn't a moment like that. Sometimes someone simply grows into a different version of themselves, and that version chooses a different path. And yeah, that realization hurts, because it means you can't undo it. You can't argue someone back into choosing you. You can't compete for someone who already decided once someone makes that choice. The only thing left for you to do is face the reality of it. She chose him. And for a while that felt like the end of my story, but eventually I realized something important. It was just the end of that chapter. After enough time passes, the pain starts changing shape. It's still there, but it's quieter. Not because what happened didn't matter, but because you slowly start seeing the situation from a different angle. At first, when she chose him, it felt like I lost. Like I had been replaced, like everything I gave somehow wasn't enough to make her stay. But the longer I sat with that feeling, the more I started realizing something important. Being chosen isn't something you can force. No amount of effort can make someone choose you if their heart is leaning somewhere else. And that's a hard truth to accept, because when you love someone, you want to believe effort is enough. You want to believe loyalty matters. You want to believe consistency will eventually win. But sometimes the person you're giving all of that to is already drifting emotionally. And when someone's heart starts drifting, effort doesn't pull them back the way you hope it will. It just delays the inevitable. Looking back now, I started noticing things I didn't fully understand at the time. Moments where she felt distant. Moments where the connection felt slightly different. Not broken, just weaker. But when you're inside the relationship, you don't see those moments as warnings. You see them as temporary. You assume things will go back to normal because that's what love does. It makes you hopeful. But sometimes hope keeps you holding on to something that someone else has already started letting go of. And that's the painful imbalance. One person still trying to build, the other person quietly preparing to leave. So when she finally chose him, it felt sudden to me. But maybe for her, that decision had been forming long before the moment it actually happened. And realizing that helped me understand something I didn't want to accept at first. I didn't lose her in a single moment. I lost her slowly, Over time, realizing I lost her slowly instead of all at once changed the way I saw everything, because for a while I kept replaying the moment she chose him like it was the exact second everything ended. But the truth is, endings like that rarely happen in one moment. They happen in stages. First the energy changes, then the attention shifts, then the emotional connection weakens, and eventually the decision just confirms what was already happening beneath the surface. Looking back, I started seeing things more clearly. There were moments where she seemed distracted, moments where our conversations felt less alive, moments where it felt like I was talking to someone who was physically there, but emotionally somewhere else. At the time, I didn't question it too much, because when you trust someone, you don't immediately assume they're drifting away. You assume things will stabilize again. You assume whatever feels off is temporary. But sometimes those moments aren't temporary. Sometimes they're the beginning of the emotional distance that eventually turns into separation. And when someone new enters the picture during that distance, everything accelerates, because now the attention they used to give you is being shared with someone else. And attention is powerful. Where attention goes, feelings follow. That's the part people don't realize until it's too late. Relationships don't only end because of arguments or big betrayals. Sometimes they end because someone else slowly starts occupying emotional space that used to belong to you. And once that space is filled, the connection you had starts shrinking. Not because you stopped trying, but because their focus shifted. And when someone's focus shifts, their feelings usually follow. So when she finally chose him, it felt sudden to me. But maybe it wasn't sudden at all. Maybe it was just the final step in something that had been changing quietly for a long time, and accepting that wasn't easy, because it meant admitting that the relationship I thought I still had was already fading before I realized it. Once I accepted that the relationship had been fading, before the moment she chose him, something else started changing inside me. The story in my head started shifting. At first, the story was simple. She chose him because I wasn't enough. That thought sits heavy when someone leaves you for someone else, because it makes it feel like a comparison you lost, like you were weighed against someone else and came up short. But the more time passed, the more I started questioning that narrative, because if I'm honest with myself, I know who I was in that relationship. I was loyal, I was present, I showed up when things weren't easy, I stayed even when conversations got difficult, and those things don't suddenly lose value just because someone decides to walk away. Sometimes people don't leave because you were lacking something. Sometimes they leave because they're searching for something different, different timing, different energy, different experiences. And when someone is searching for something different, the person they leave behind isn't always the problem. They're just not the direction that person wants to move in anymore. That realization doesn't erase the pain instantly, but it does change the way you carry it, because instead of feeling like you lost a competition, you start realizing that you were simply part of someone else's journey, a chapter, not the entire story. And yeah, that can be hard to accept at first, because when you're in love, you don't imagine yourself as just a chapter. You imagine yourself as the ending, but life doesn't always work like that. Sometimes people walk into your life for a season, they teach you something, they change you in ways you didn't expect, and then they move on to a different path. And when that happens, the choice they make isn't always about your worth. Sometimes it's simply about their direction. She chose him, but that doesn't mean I was someone unworthy of being chosen. It just means her path went somewhere else. By the time enough time passed, the pain stopped feeling like rejection and started feeling more like clarity, because when someone chooses someone else over you, it forces you to confront something uncomfortable. You can't control who someone chooses. You can't convince someone to value what they've already started letting go of. And you definitely can't compete for someone who's already made their decision. For a long time, I thought about what I could have done differently. Maybe I could have been more exciting. Maybe I could have been more unpredictable. Maybe I could have noticed the distance sooner. But eventually I realized something important. Even if I had done everything perfectly, the outcome might have been the same. Because when someone's feelings start shifting, they don't always shift because of something you did wrong. Sometimes they shift because that person is changing. Their priorities change, their emotions change, the things they're drawn to change. And when that happens, the person they once chose can slowly stop feeling like the person they want to keep choosing. That doesn't mean the connection was fake, it just means it wasn't permanent. And once I understood that, something inside me relaxed, not because it stopped hurting, but because I stopped trying to rewrite the past. I stopped trying to find the exact moment where everything could have been saved, because sometimes relationships don't end because of a single mistake. Sometimes they end because two people slowly start walking in different directions, and when that happens, no amount of effort can force the paths back together. She chose him, and for a long time, that sentence felt like the worst thing that could have happened to me. But eventually I started realizing something else. If someone can choose someone else over you, then they were never meant to be the person who chooses you forever. And that realization hurts at first, but it also frees you, because it reminds you that being chosen by the wrong person isn't the goal. Being chosen by the right person is. Looking back now, the moment she chose him doesn't define me the way it used to. At first it felt like proof that I lost something important, but over time I realized something different. I didn't lose my ability to love. I didn't lose my loyalty. I didn't lose the way I show up for people when I care about them. Those things didn't disappear just because one person decided to walk away. The only thing that changed was the direction my life was moving in. And maybe that direction was always meant to change, because the truth is, relationships aren't about holding on to someone who no longer chooses you. They're about eventually finding someone who continues choosing you, not once, not only when things feel easy, but again and again. Through the normal days, through the difficult conversations, through the moments where excitement fades and what's left is commitment. And if someone can walk away from you for someone else, it simply means they weren't the person who was going to make that kind of commitment. She chose him, and that used to feel like the end of my story. Now it just feels like a moment that redirected it, because one day someone else will choose me, and when they do, it won't feel like a competition, it'll feel like certainty. I didn't realize it at first, but she was keeping me around just in case things didn't work out with someone else, just in case she got bored, just in case she needed someone who would always answer. And the worst part, I thought I was actually important to her, because she would still text me, still check in, still have those moments where it felt like we had something real. So I stayed, because when someone doesn't fully leave, it gives you hope. And hope is dangerous when it's built on inconsistency. There would be days where she talked to me like I was the only person that mattered, then days where it felt like I didn't exist. And every time she came back, I told myself the same thing. Maybe this time it's real, but now I see it clearly. I wasn't her priority. I was her backup plan. The confusing part about being someone's just in case is that it doesn't feel obvious, it doesn't feel like rejection. It feels like almost consistent, almost real, almost something worth holding on to, because she never fully disappeared. She would come back, random messages, random conversations, random moments where it felt like everything was normal again. And every time that happened, it reset everything in my head. It made me forget the distance, forget the inconsistency, forget the fact that I only heard from her when it was convenient, because those moments felt real. And when something feels real, you don't question it, you lean into it. But what I didn't realize was this: she wasn't coming back because she chose me. She was coming back because she needed something: attention, comfort, familiarity, and I was always there to give it. That's what kept me in the cycle, because I wasn't being rejected, I was being reused. The more I looked at it honestly, the more the pattern became clear. I wasn't part of her life consistently. I was part of her life conveniently. She would show up when things felt off for her, when she needed someone to talk to, when she needed to feel like someone still cared. And every time I was there, not questioning it, not hesitating, just showing up the same way I always did. Because in my head, I thought consistency would eventually turn into something real. I thought if I stayed long enough, showed enough, proved enough, she would finally choose me, but now I see it differently. I wasn't building something with her. I was maintaining a position she never fully committed to, and that's the hardest part. Realizing you were giving real effort to something that was never real in the same way. There's something subtle about being kept just in case. It doesn't destroy you all at once, it slowly drains you, because you're always in between, not fully chosen, not fully let go, just there. And that in-between space is confusing, because you don't know how to act. Do you pull back? Do you stay consistent? Do you treat it like something serious or something temporary? So you end up doing what I did. You stay, you give, you hope. Because every time she came back, it felt like confirmation that I still mattered. But what I didn't understand was this. Being remembered isn't the same as being chosen. Just because someone comes back to you doesn't mean they value you the way you think they do. Sometimes it just means you're available. The turning point for me wasn't when she left. It was when I started paying attention to when she came back. Because it was never random. It was always when something else in her life wasn't working. When she felt bored. When she felt alone. When she needed someone to fill that gap. That's when I would hear from her again. And at first I didn't connect those dots. I just saw it as her coming back. But once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. You realize you're not part of her routine. You're part of her fallback. And that changes everything. Because now it's not about misunderstanding the connection. It's about understanding your position in it. And my position was never first, never consistent, just there when she needed me. Once I accepted that, the situation stopped feeling confusing and started feeling clear. Painful, but clear, because now I understood why the connection never felt stable, why I was always questioning things, why it felt like I was holding on to something that kept slipping. It wasn't because I wasn't doing enough, it was because she was never fully in. You can't build something stable with someone who only shows up part-time. You can't create consistency with someone who treats you like an option. And I was trying to turn something temporary into something permanent. That's why it never worked. For a while I blamed myself. I thought maybe if I had pulled back sooner, maybe if I acted less available, maybe if I made her miss me more, things would have been different. But the truth is, people who see you as just in case don't suddenly turn you into a priority. They just adjust how often they come back. That's it. And once I understood that, I stopped trying to change how she saw me, because the problem wasn't what I was doing, it was how she valued me. And you can't force someone to value you correctly. That's when I had to be honest with myself. I wasn't stuck because of her. I was stuck because I kept accepting that position. I kept answering, kept showing up, kept giving her access to me whenever she decided to come back. And every time I did that, I reinforced the same thing, that I would always be there no matter how inconsistent she was. And once you allow that pattern, it becomes the expectation, not the exception. So the real shift didn't come from her changing. It came from me realizing I had to stop participating in it. Walking away from that wasn't easy, because when you've been someone's just in case for a while, it starts to feel normal. You get used to the cycle, the ups, the silence, the return. And breaking that cycle means facing something uncomfortable, that the connection you thought you had was never what you believed it was. But once you step out of it, you start seeing clearly again. You start realizing how much energy you were giving to something that wasn't giving you the same in return. And that clarity changes everything. So yeah, she kept me around just in case, and for a while I stayed because I thought being there meant something, but now I understand the difference. Being someone's option isn't the same as being someone's choice. The right person doesn't keep you on standby. They don't come and go. They don't leave you guessing about where you stand. They choose you, clearly, consistently, without hesitation. And next time, I won't stay in a position where I feel like I'm waiting to be picked, because I'm not here to be someone's just in case. I'm here to be someone's only choice. She made me feel loved, not in a loud way, not in a dramatic way, in a steady way. She checked in, she listened, she remembered the small things, and the crazy part? I didn't know what to do with it. Because when you're used to chaos, consistency feels unfamiliar. When you're used to chasing, being chosen feels suspicious. She wasn't confusing, she wasn't distant, she wasn't playing games, she was just there. And for some reason, that scared me more than anything. Healthy love feels calm, and when you're used to chaos, calm can feel boring. There were no mixed signals, no guessing games, no hot and cold energy. She didn't make me question where I stood, and that was new. I was used to intensity, late night arguments, emotional highs and lows, passion that felt like a roller coaster. With her, it was steady, and instead of relaxing into it, I started looking for something wrong. Because when you've been conditioned to associate love with anxiety, peace feels unfamiliar. You mistake stability for a lack of spark, consistency for predictability, security for missing something. But the truth, nothing was missing. I just didn't know how to receive love that didn't hurt first. Sometimes we don't sabotage love because we don't care. We sabotage it because we don't feel worthy of it. She showed up consistently, she communicated clearly, she didn't make me chase, and instead of feeling grateful, I felt exposed, because when someone loves you properly, they see you, not just the confident version, not just the charming version. The insecure parts too, the guarded parts, the parts that still haven't healed. And when you don't fully love yourself, being loved deeply feels uncomfortable. You start thinking, what if she realizes I'm not as solid as I seem? What if she expects more than I can give? What if I mess this up? So you create distance first, you act unsure, you slow down, you convince yourself the timing isn't right, not because she wasn't enough, but because you didn't feel like you were. I told myself it wasn't the right time, that I needed to focus on myself, that I wasn't in the right headspace, that something felt off, but if I'm being honest, nothing was off. I was just scared of being responsible for something real. Scared of being consistent, scared of not being able to hide behind confusion anymore. Because when someone loves you right, there's no chaos to blame, no mixed signals to point at, no drama to distract you. It's just clarity, and clarity means accountability. I couldn't say she didn't show up, she did. I couldn't say she wasn't serious, she was. So the only thing left to question was myself, and that's harder than walking away. You don't always realize what you had while you have it. Sometimes you realize it in the silence after, when the good morning texts stop, when the consistency disappears, when the calm you once questioned is suddenly gone. And that's when it hits. She wasn't boring, she was safe, she wasn't too available, she was intentional. She wasn't lacking spark, she just wasn't chaos. I confused stability with something missing because I was addicted to intensity. And now that it's quiet, I see it clearly. She wasn't asking for too much. She was offering exactly what I claimed I wanted, and the hardest part is realizing she didn't leave because she didn't care. She left because I hesitated. Growth doesn't always happen while you're in something good. Sometimes it happens after you lose it, after the silence, after the distance, after you sit alone with no one to blame but yourself. That's when reflection hits differently. You replay conversations, moments you brushed off, times she asked for reassurance and you gave her half answers, not because you didn't care, but because you weren't mature enough yet to handle something healthy. And the painful part, you finally become the version of yourself that she needed, clearer, more emotionally aware, more ready, but she's not there anymore. And that's the lesson. Sometimes the right person meets you at the wrong version of yourself, and losing them is what forces you to grow. Now the question is different. Do I reach back out, or do I let her have the peace I couldn't give her before because missing someone isn't the same as being ready for them? Regret can feel like growth, loneliness can feel like clarity, but are you actually different, or do you just miss how she made you feel? That's the part nobody talks about. It's easy to want someone back when you finally understand their value. It's harder to admit you might still not be the version they deserve. Reaching out isn't about easing your guilt. It's about being certain you won't repeat the same pattern. Because if she loved you right once, she deserves someone who can love her right back. And if that's finally you, then show up differently. If it's not, let her be loved properly by someone who was ready the first time. Being ready isn't about having your life perfect. It's about emotional responsibility. It's about being able to communicate without shutting down, being consistent without feeling trapped, being vulnerable without running when it gets real. I thought being ready meant having money right, career right, timing right, but she didn't need perfection. She needed presence. She needed reassurance without having to beg for it. She needed clarity without having to decode it. She needed someone who didn't confuse peace with boredom. And the truth, I wasn't emotionally disciplined enough. I like being loved, but I wasn't ready to love back at the same level. And that's the difference. Being ready means you don't just enjoy the love, you reciprocate it fully. Was losing her a mistake, or was it a lesson I had to learn the hard way? At first it felt like a mistake, like I let something rare slip through my hands, like I fumbled the one person who actually showed up right. But the more I sat with it, the more I realized something. If I wasn't ready, I would have hurt her eventually. Not intentionally, not maliciously, but through inconsistency, through hesitation, through emotional immaturity. And she didn't deserve that. Sometimes the loss isn't punishment, it's preparation. Preparation to become the version of yourself who doesn't run from healthy love, who doesn't confuse peace with boredom, who doesn't sabotage stability. Maybe she wasn't meant to stay forever. Maybe she was meant to show me what real love looks like, so I'd stop settling for less and stop being less. And that doesn't erase the regret, but it gives it meaning. Will she ever know how much she meant to me? Probably not in the way she deserved, because when she was loving me out loud, I was loving her quietly. When she was certain, I was unsure. When she was present, I was half in. And now that I finally understand her value, it's in hindsight. But here's what I do know. She raised my standard, not just for what I want, but for who I need to be. She showed me that love doesn't have to be chaotic to be real, that consistency isn't boring, that reassurance isn't weakness, that stability is rare, and maybe she'll never know how much she changed me. Maybe she'll never know that losing her is what forced me to grow. But one day, when I love someone the right way, fully, clearly, consistently, a part of that will be because of her, because she loved me right, even when I wasn't ready, and that's something I'll always respect. For the longest time I thought she loved me, not just liked me, not just enjoyed being around me. I thought she actually loved me, because she talked to me every day, she wanted to know what I was doing, she asked about my life like it mattered to her. And when someone shows you that kind of attention, it's easy to believe the feelings behind it are real. So I believed it. I believed the late night conversations meant something deeper. I believed the way she smiled when we talked meant she cared. I believed all the time we spent together was building something real. But looking back now, I think she didn't love me. I think she loved the attention. There's a difference. When someone loves you, they care about who you are, your thoughts, your struggles, your future. They care about the person standing in front of them. But when someone loves the attention, the focus isn't really on you, it's on how you make them feel, the compliments, the validation, the feeling of being wanted, and for a while I was giving her all of that. I was the person who always answered, the person who always listened, the person who always showed up when she needed someone to talk to, and I thought that meant I mattered to her, but eventually I started noticing something strange. Whenever I pulled back, she suddenly came closer. Whenever I stopped giving her attention, she started reaching out again. Not because she missed me, but because she missed the way I made her feel. And that's when something started becoming clear. Maybe she didn't love me the way I thought she did. Maybe she just loved having someone who cared about her that much. Once that thought entered my head, that maybe she didn't love me, maybe she just loved the attention, I started seeing things differently. Moments that once felt meaningful started feeling different. I remembered how often she reached out when she was bored, when she had nothing going on, when she needed someone to talk to, and every time I was there, answering her messages, listening to her problems, giving her reassurance whenever she doubted herself. At the time, I thought that's what love looked like. Two people being there for each other. But when I really looked at it honestly, something felt uneven. Because when she needed attention, I was always available. But when I needed support, it didn't always feel the same. Sometimes she would disappear. Sometimes the conversation would suddenly end. Sometimes it felt like the connection only existed when she was the one who needed it. And that's when the difficult question started forming in my mind. Was she actually interested in me? Or was she interested in the way I made her feel about herself? Because attention can be addictive. When someone constantly reminds you that you're special, that you're wanted, that someone cares deeply about you, it feels good, really good. And some people don't fall in love with the person giving them that feeling. They fall in love with the feeling itself, the validation, the reassurance, the comfort of knowing someone is always there. And I think that's what I was to her. Not a partner, not someone she truly wanted to build something with, but someone who gave her a constant source of emotional attention. And the moment I started seeing that pattern, everything began to make more sense. The more I thought about it, the more patterns started standing out. Because when someone actually loves you, their presence in your life is consistent. They don't only show up when they need something. They don't only reach out when they're bored. They don't only care when the attention is focused on them. But with her, the connection always seemed to revolve around how she felt. If she had a bad day, I was the first person she called. If she felt insecure, I was the one reminding her how amazing she was. If she needed someone to listen, I was always there. And at the time, I thought that meant I was important to her. But eventually, I noticed something uncomfortable. When I had a bad day, she wasn't always there the same way. When I needed reassurance, the conversation would shift quickly. When I tried to open up about my own struggles, it didn't always hold her attention for long. And that's when it started feeling like the relationship wasn't built around us. It was built around her receiving and me giving. And the scary part about that kind of dynamic is you don't notice it right away. Because when you care about someone, giving feels natural. You don't keep score. You don't measure every moment of effort. You just show up because you believe the connection matters. But slowly you start realizing something. You're the one holding most of the emotional weight. You're the one keeping the conversations alive. You're the one making sure the connection doesn't fade. And when you stop doing that, everything changes. That's when the real truth shows itself. Because the moment I stopped giving her constant attention, something strange happened. She didn't start fighting harder for the connection. She didn't try to understand what changed. Instead, the distance grew. And that's when I realized something that hurt more than the breakup itself. She didn't miss me. She missed the attention I gave her. Realizing that she didn't miss me, she missed the attention, was one of the hardest truths to accept. Because when you care about someone deeply, you don't want to believe that your place in their life was built around something that shallow. You want to believe the connection meant something real, that the conversations mattered, that the time you spent talking late at night actually meant you were building something. But once I started paying attention to the pattern, it became impossible to ignore. Whenever I gave her attention, everything felt great. She was warm, engaged, interested. She would laugh more, reply faster, make it seem like we had this deep connection. But the moment that attention slowed down, everything changed. Suddenly the conversations felt shorter, the interest faded, the energy shifted, and that's when it finally clicked. Her feelings weren't connected to me. They were connected to the attention I was giving her. Because when someone loves you, their connection doesn't disappear just because the attention changes. But when someone loves the attention, the moment that validation slows down, so does their interest. And looking back now, that explains everything. Why she would suddenly become distant, why she would come back the moment I stopped reaching out, why the connection always felt strongest when I was the one giving the most. It wasn't love, it was validation, and I was the person supplying it. Once I finally understood that she loved the attention more than she loved me, a lot of things started making sense. For the longest time, I kept wondering why the connection always felt unstable, why some days she seemed completely invested, and other days she felt distant, why the energy between us depended so heavily on how much I was giving. At the time, I thought that was normal. I thought relationships just had ups and downs. But there's a difference between normal ups and downs and a connection that only exists when one person is constantly feeding it. And that's what this was. Whenever I was fully present, texting first, asking about her day, complimenting her, showing that I cared, everything felt good between us. But when I pulled back even slightly, the dynamic changed immediately. The warmth disappeared, the conversation slowed down, and the connection that once felt so strong suddenly felt fragile. That's when it became impossible to ignore what was really happening. Because love doesn't disappear just because attention shifts for a moment, but validation does. Validation needs constant reinforcement. It needs someone to keep providing that feeling of being admired and wanted. And once that source slows down, the person who depended on it starts looking for it somewhere else. That's when I realized something that hurt more than I expected. I wasn't the person she loved. I was the person who made her feel important. And once you realize that difference, you start understanding the relationship in a completely different way. Once that realization settled in, that she loved the attention more than she loved me, something inside me started shifting. At first it hurt more, because it meant all the things I thought were meaningful might not have meant the same thing to her. All those long conversations, all the moments where she told me things she said she didn't tell anyone else, all the time she said she appreciated having me in her life. I thought those things meant we were building something real, but now I started seeing them through a different lens. Maybe she didn't say those things because she loved me. Maybe she said them because she loved the feeling of having someone who cared about her that much. And that's a dangerous dynamic, because when someone becomes your main source of validation, it feels powerful. You feel admired, you feel important, you feel like someone is always there to remind you that you matter. But that feeling isn't the same as love. Love cares about the person giving the attention. Validation only cares about the feeling it creates. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized something uncomfortable. Whenever I tried to shift the focus of the relationship, whenever I wanted something deeper, the energy changed. If I asked serious questions about where things were going, if I talked about building something more stable, if I needed emotional support myself, that's when the connection suddenly felt weaker. Almost like the relationship only worked when I was the one giving, not when I needed something back. And that's when the truth became impossible to ignore. The relationship wasn't built on mutual connection. It was built on attention, and I was the one providing it. After I understood that the relationship was built more on attention than love, another uncomfortable truth started showing itself. I wasn't just giving attention, I was maintaining the entire connection. I was the one making sure the conversation didn't die. I was the one checking in first. I was the one asking how she was doing, making sure she felt heard, making sure she felt valued. And at the time, I didn't see that as a problem. When you care about someone, putting in effort feels natural. You don't think about it like a transaction. You think about it like loyalty. But over time, I started noticing something. The relationship only felt alive when I was feeding it. Whenever I stepped back, even a little, everything started fading. The messages slowed down, the energy dropped. The connection that once felt strong suddenly felt fragile, and that's when it hit me. Love doesn't disappear the moment someone stops giving constant attention, but validation does. Validation needs fuel. It needs someone constantly reminding you that you're wanted, that you're interesting, that someone is thinking about you. And the moment that fuel slows down, the person who depended on it starts feeling empty. That's when they either come back asking for more, or they go find someone else who will give it to them. And I think that's what I was to her. Not a partner, not someone she truly wanted to build something with. I was a source of attention, a source of validation, a source of emotional reassurance. And once you realize you were someone's source, not their choice, the whole relationship starts looking different. Once I accepted that I was just a source of attention for her, something else started becoming clear. The connection only existed when it benefited her emotionally. Whenever she needed reassurance, I was important. Whenever she felt lonely, I mattered. Whenever she needed someone to remind her that she was attractive, interesting, or worth talking to, suddenly I was the person she wanted to talk to again. But the moment she felt good again, the moment that emotional gap inside her was filled, something would change. The urgency would disappear. The replies would slow down, the energy would fade, and I would sit there wondering what I did wrong. For a long time, I blamed myself for those shifts. I thought maybe I said something wrong. Maybe I wasn't interesting enough. Maybe I didn't keep the excitement alive. But once you understand the difference between love and attention, everything makes more sense. Love stays even when the excitement fades. Love stays even when you're not constantly entertaining someone. Love stays even when the validation slows down for a moment. But attention doesn't work like that. Attention is temporary. It's something people chase when they need to feel good about themselves. And once they get that feeling again, they don't always need the person who gave it to them anymore. Looking back, that explains why the connection always felt inconsistent. It explains why some days she felt deeply invested in us all, and other days it felt like she barely noticed I existed, because I wasn't the person she loved. I was the person she turned to whenever she needed to feel important. And once I saw that clearly, the whole relationship started making sense in a way it never had before. For a while, realizing that hurt more than anything else, because nobody wants to believe they were just someone's source of attention. You want to believe the connection meant something deeper. You want to believe the time you invested mattered in the same way for both of you. But eventually something changed in the way I saw it. I stopped feeling embarrassed about how much I cared, because caring deeply isn't the problem. The problem is giving that level of attention to someone who only values the feeling it gives them. And that's a big difference. There's nothing wrong with being loyal. There's nothing wrong with showing up for someone you care about. The mistake is believing that everyone who accepts your attention values it the same way you do. Some people appreciate attention, other people depend on it. And the people who depend on it will keep you close as long as you keep feeding that feeling inside them. But the moment the attention stops, the connection disappears, not because they suddenly stop liking you, but because the feeling they were chasing isn't coming from you anymore. And once you understand that, something inside you changes. You stop chasing people who only show up when they need something. You stop investing in connections that only exist when you're the one giving, because you realize something important. You deserve someone who values you, not just the attention you give them. Looking back now, I don't think she loved me, but I also don't think she was pretending the whole time. I think she genuinely liked how I made her feel. She liked the attention. She liked the reassurance. She liked having someone who consistently reminded her that she mattered. And for a while, that was enough to keep the connection alive. But attention alone can't build something real. Because the moment that attention stops, there's nothing holding the relationship together. And that's exactly what happened. Once I stopped constantly feeding the connection, it disappeared. At first, that felt like rejection, but now I see it differently. It wasn't rejection, it was clarity, because it showed me the difference between someone who loves you and someone who only loves the feeling you give them. And once you see that difference clearly, you stop blaming yourself for the way things ended. You realize you weren't losing someone who truly valued you. You were losing someone who valued what you provided. And that's not the kind of connection worth holding on to. One day I'll meet someone who doesn't just enjoy the attention I give them. Someone who actually cares about the person giving it. Someone who chooses me even when the excitement fades. Someone who values the connection, not just the validation. And when that happens, I won't feel like I'm constantly proving my worth, because the right person doesn't stay for the attention, they stay for you. She replaced me in a week, 7 days, and I've replayed that number in my head more times than I'd like to admit. Because when something you invested months, maybe years, into gets swapped out in 7 days, it doesn't just hurt, it destabilizes you. It makes you question your perception, it makes you question your value, it makes you question whether what you had was ever real in the first place. I keep thinking about how we ended the conversations, the tone, the way she said she needed time, the way she said she had to focus on herself. And then a week later, there's someone else standing where I used to stand. So what was the truth? Was she grieving while I was still loving? Was she detaching while I was trying? Was I the only one still emotionally present toward the end? Because you don't replace someone in a week unless you were already halfway gone. That's the part that keeps echoing in my mind. You don't wake up on Monday heartbroken and by Sunday decide you're ready for someone new. That's not healing, that's transition. And if she transitioned that smoothly, that quickly, then maybe I wasn't as permanent in her world as she was in mine. And that realization stings more than the breakup itself, because breakups hurt. But being replaced fast, that attacks your identity. It makes you feel temporary. It makes you feel interchangeable. It makes you feel like you were just holding a spot until something better came along. And I hate that my mind even goes there. But when someone replaces you in a week, you start asking dangerous questions. Was I not enough? Was I boring? Was I too available? Did she already have him lined up? Was I just comfortable, not essential? And the scary part is, your brain doesn't just ask those questions, it starts believing them. You start comparing yourself to someone you don't even know. You start imagining that he must have something you didn't. More excitement, more dominance, more money, more mystery, more something. And now it feels like you lost a competition you didn't even know you were in. But love was never supposed to be competitive. It was supposed to be intentional, chosen, protected. And if she could swap me out in 7 days, then maybe what we had wasn't as protected as I thought. Maybe I was fighting for something that was already slipping away. Maybe I was loving someone who had already emotionally exited. And that's the part that hurts the most. Not that she found someone new, but that she found someone new that quickly, because that speed tells a story. And I'm still trying to figure out what that story says about me. I think what really messed with me wasn't just that she replaced me, it was how effortless it looked, how natural she made it seem. Like I was just a chapter she flipped past without rereading. because I'm still here sitting with it, still replaying the last conversations in my head, still wondering if I missed signs, still trying to understand where it actually started falling apart, and she's already smiling next to someone new. That kind of speed doesn't just hurt, it humiliates you. It makes you feel like you were the only one emotionally invested at the end. Like while you were trying to fix it, she was already detaching. Like while you were thinking, we just need time, she was thinking, I need someone else. And the scariest part, I don't know which version of reality is true. Was she already talking to him before we ended? Was I slowly being phased out while I was still trying to show up? Or did she just move on that fast because she can't be alone? Every scenario hurts in a different way. If she was already lining him up, then I was loving someone who was preparing my replacement. If she just needed validation that quickly, then I was never the emotional anchor I thought I was. And if she genuinely didn't feel anything after it ended, then maybe I meant less than I believed. That's what a 1-week replacement does to your mind. It makes you question the entire foundation. You start rewriting memories. That time she seemed distant, that time she picked a fight out of nowhere, that time she said she felt confused. Now they don't feel random anymore. Now they feel like early signs of an exit. And the worst part is realizing that you might have been the only one still emotionally inside the relationship toward the end, because you can't replace someone in a week unless you were already halfway gone. And that's the sentence that keeps echoing. Halfway gone. Maybe she left emotionally months ago. Maybe I was loving someone who had already checked out. Maybe the breakup wasn't the beginning of the end. Maybe it was just the announcement, and that realization shifts the pain, because now it's not just heartbreak, it's feeling blindsided, it's feeling like you were operating on outdated information, like you thought you were both building, but she was already packing. And I hate that this makes me question my value, because logically, I know someone moving on fast doesn't define me, but emotionally, it feels like it does. It feels like I was replaceable, interchangeable, temporary, and nobody wants to feel temporary in something they treated as permanent. I keep thinking about how deeply I committed, how I shut down distractions, how I defended her when people doubted us, how I chose her repeatedly. And now it feels like I was the only one guarding something she was willing to trade. That's what makes it feel unfair. Not that she moved on, but that she moved on like it was easy, like I was just space that needed to be filled. And that's the dangerous thought, because I wasn't just space, I was time, I was effort, I was loyalty, I was presence. And if she could replace all of that in 7 days, then either she never fully valued it, or she never fully processed it. And I don't know which one hurts more, because if she didn't value it, then I misjudged everything. And if she didn't process it, then she's just distracting herself. But distraction still feels like replacement when you're the one left behind. And I'm left here trying to rebuild confidence that got shaken by a 7-day timeline, trying to remind myself that speed doesn't equal significance, trying to remember that depth doesn't get erased overnight, because if what we had was real to me, then it was real, even if she replaced it quickly. But still, 7 days. That number doesn't just represent time, it represents how fast someone can move on when you thought you meant more. And I'm still trying to figure out what that says about her and what it doesn't say about me. The part nobody prepares you for is how fast replacement attacks your confidence. Not just your feelings, your confidence, because heartbreak hurts your chest, but being replaced quickly hits your ego. And ego isn't pride, ego is identity. It's how you see yourself. And when someone moves on in a week, your brain starts filling in blanks you never wanted to think about. You start comparing yourself to someone you don't even know. What does he have that I don't? Is he more exciting, more unpredictable, more emotionally unavailable, more dominant, more detached? Did she need someone less steady, less serious, less invested? You start dissecting yourself like you were the problem to be solved. And that's dangerous because now it's not just about her moving on, it's about you feeling like you lost to someone else, like this was a competition, like you were weighed against another option and didn't measure up. But here's the part that doesn't get talked about. If someone can replace you in a week, they didn't replace you. They replaced the role, they replaced the attention, they replaced the space, they replaced the feeling of not being alone, but connection, real connection, that doesn't get swapped that quickly. You can substitute company, you can substitute validation, but you can't duplicate depth overnight. And I have to keep reminding myself of that, because when you see them laughing together, posting together, looking comfortable together, your mind doesn't care about logic. It sees images and it translates them into meaning. They're happier. She upgraded. You weren't enough. But images don't show history. They don't show inside jokes. They don't show late night vulnerability. They don't show how deeply you invested. They show a moment, and moments are easy to manufacture. Depth takes time, and if she replaced me in 7 days, then either she had already emotionally left long before we officially ended, or she doesn't process loss the way I do. And both are hard to accept, because if she left emotionally before I did, then I was loving someone who was already gone. And if she doesn't process loss deeply, then I was loving someone who doesn't sit with pain. She escapes it. And escape looks like replacement when you're the one grieving. I won't lie though. Part of what hurts is feeling disposable. Like I was just a chapter. Like I was just a phase. Like I was someone she needed for that season. And once it was over, I was easy to move past. But here's what I'm starting to understand. People who move on that quickly aren't necessarily healed. They're avoiding, they're filling silence, they're covering discomfort, because sitting alone after a breakup is uncomfortable. It forces reflection, it forces accountability, it forces grief, and not everyone has the emotional discipline to sit with that. Some people run straight into the next distraction, not because the previous person meant nothing, but because feeling nothing feels easier than feeling everything. And I need to remember that her timeline isn't a measurement of my worth. It's a reflection of her coping style. Still, that doesn't erase the sting, because I'm still here thinking about what we had. Still processing, still grieving, still reconstructing my confidence, and she's already building something new. That imbalance feels unfair, like I'm stuck in emotional traffic while she sped through the exit ramp, and maybe that's the hardest pill to swallow. Not that she found someone else, but that she found someone else while I'm still untangling myself from what we were. It makes you feel behind, like you're losing, like you're weaker for caring longer, but caring longer isn't weakness, it's depth, and depth doesn't reset in 7 days. So maybe the real truth is this: she replaced the position, but she didn't replace the impact. And if what we had was real to me, then it mattered, even if she chose not to sit in it, even if she chose speed over reflection, because I would rather be the one who feels deeply than the one who forgets quickly. 7 days might look like replacement, but sometimes it's just avoidance in disguise. And one day, when the distraction fades, she might finally sit with what I've been sitting with this whole time, and by then I'll be further ahead emotionally than she ever was, not because I moved on faster, but because I actually processed it. And that's something nobody can replace in a week. The worst part about her replacing me in a week isn't even the new guy, it's the silence that came with it, because when someone moves on that fast, they don't just leave you, they erase you, the calls stop, the inside jokes disappear, the routine you built together vanishes, and suddenly the person who used to know your schedule, your moods, your patterns, is giving that attention to someone else. That's what makes it feel unreal, because it's not just that she found someone new, it's that she redirected everything so easily. The same energy, the same time, the same effort, just different face. And that's when your mind spirals into the dangerous place. If she can give someone else what she gave me that quickly, was it ever special? That question hits hard, because we don't just want to be loved, we want to feel irreplaceable. We want to feel like what we built had weight, like it left a mark, like it couldn't just be swapped out like a profile picture. And when she replaced me in 7 days, it felt like I was lightweight, like I was something she could carry easily and set down just as easily. But here's the thing I keep wrestling with. Maybe it wasn't easy. Maybe it just looks easy. Social media never shows grief. It doesn't show reflection. It doesn't show confusion. It shows highlights. And maybe what I'm seeing is the highlight reel of her coping. Because moving on quickly doesn't always mean you didn't care. Sometimes it means you can't sit still with pain. Sometimes it means you need distraction to avoid accountability. Sometimes it means you'd rather build something new than examine why the last thing broke. But none of that makes it easier to watch, because while she's building new memories, I'm still dismantling old ones. I'm still processing the last conversation, still remembering the way she used to look at me, still trying to figure out when it started fading. And that imbalance makes you feel like you lost twice. You lost the relationship, and you lost the race to move on. And I hate that it feels like a race, because healing shouldn't be competitive. But when someone replaces you in a week, it feels like you're the only one still standing in the wreckage, like she walked away from the crash without even looking back, and you're still checking for broken pieces. What hurts even more is knowing I didn't have a backup. I didn't have someone lined up. I didn't have a just in case. When we ended, it was just me in the silence, and I chose to sit in it, not because I wanted to suffer, but because I respect what we had enough to process it properly. So when she jumped into something new that fast, it felt like I was the only one honoring the history, like I was the only one treating it like it mattered, and that's a lonely feeling. To believe something was significant and watch the other person treat it like it was temporary. But maybe the truth is simpler. Maybe she didn't replace me. Maybe she replaced the feeling of being alone. Maybe she replaced the discomfort. Maybe she replaced the emptiness, because some people don't know how to sit with themselves after something ends. They need noise. They need attention. They need someone new to prove they're still wanted, and if that's the case, then her moving on in a week says more about her relationship with silence than it does about my value. Still, that doesn't stop the thoughts, because at night, logic fades and emotion gets loud, and in those moments, it feels like I wasn't enough. Like if I had been better, stronger, more exciting, more something, she wouldn't have moved on that fast. But I have to remind myself, you can be enough for someone and still not be there forever. You can love someone deeply and still not be what they're built to keep. And if she could replace me in 7 days, then maybe I wasn't meant to stay in her life long term. Maybe I was a lesson. Maybe she was mine. But what I refuse to accept is that I was insignificant, because I know how I loved, I know how I showed up, I know how I committed, and those things don't become meaningless just because someone else moved quickly. If anything, they prove something about me, that I invest fully, that I don't keep backups, that I don't treat people like placeholders. And maybe that's rare. Maybe that's why this hurts more, because I wasn't halfway in. I was all the way in. And when you're all the way in, being replaced feels like being erased, but I'm not erased. I'm just healing at a pace that reflects depth, and depth doesn't reset in 7 days. So yeah, she replaced me in a week, but that week doesn't define my worth. It defines her coping speed. And one day when she finally slows down, she might realize you can replace a person's position, but you can't replace the way they loved you. And that's something no one swaps out in 7 days. There's a different kind of pain that comes from being replaced quickly. It's not just heartbreak, it's humiliation. And I don't mean humiliation in a loud, dramatic way. I mean the quiet kind, the kind where you sit alone thinking, how did I not see this coming? Because when someone moves on in a week, it makes you question your awareness. Were there signs I ignored? Did she emotionally detach months before I noticed? Was I holding on to something that was already slipping through my hands? And that's the part that messes with your head the most. Because now it's not just about losing her, it's about doubting yourself, your intuition, your judgment, your ability to read people. You start replaying moments that once felt normal, that random argument, that night she seemed distant, that time she picked up her phone and turned it away slightly, that period where she felt off but said she was fine. At the time, you trusted her words. Now you question everything, because if she replaced you in 7 days, your brain automatically assumes she had a head start, and whether that's true or not, the damage is the same. It makes you feel like you were the only one fully in it, like you were the only one fighting for something she had already decided to let go of, and that imbalance feels like betrayal, even if technically it wasn't. Because the emotional timing didn't match. You were still invested, she was already transitioning, and that creates this gap, a painful one, where you're grieving something she already processed, or avoided, or replaced, and it makes you feel late, like you're the last one to realize the relationship was over, and I hate that feeling, because I don't like feeling behind. I don't like feeling like I was operating with outdated information. I don't like feeling like I was loving someone who had already emotionally packed their bags, but maybe that's the reality. Maybe the breakup wasn't the beginning of her detachment. Maybe it was the end of it. Maybe she had already done her grieving while I was still trying to fix things. And that realization hurts in a different way. Because now it's not just that she moved on fast, it's that she moved on before I even knew we were done. And I'm stuck here wondering when it actually ended. Was it weeks before the breakup? Months? Did she slowly disconnect while I was still showing up? Because that's the part nobody prepares you for. The possibility that you were loving someone who was already halfway gone. And if that's true, then I wasn't replaced in a week. I was replaced long before that. I just didn't know it yet. But here's the thing, I'm slowly starting to understand. Even if she emotionally left before I did, that doesn't make me weak. It doesn't make me naive. It means I was committed. It means I was still trying. It means I was operating in good faith. And I'd rather be the one who stayed genuine than the one who quietly exited without saying it, because I know how I loved. I didn't keep options open. I didn't emotionally detach while pretending everything was fine. I didn't start building something new while something old was still alive. When I was in it fully. And if she replaced me in a week, then that says something about her capacity to detach, not about my capacity to matter. Still, that week will probably always sting, not because of the new guy, but because of what it symbolized. How quickly someone can shift focus, how fast attention can be redirected, how easy it can look to replace what felt permanent. But maybe permanence isn't about how long something lasts, maybe it's about how deeply it was felt. And if I'm still here processing it while she moved on fast, then maybe I was the one who felt it deeper. And that doesn't make me the loser. It makes me the one who actually experienced it. 7 days might have been enough for her to move forward, but it's not enough to erase what I gave. And I refuse to let her timeline rewrite my value, because being replaced quickly hurts, but being genuine never does. There's something else that hurts about being replaced in a week. It makes you question whether you were ever chosen or just convenient, because if someone can transition that smoothly, that fast, it starts to feel like you were just occupying space, like you weren't irreplaceable, like you were temporary comfort. And nobody wants to feel like temporary comfort. I keep thinking about the way she used to look at me. The way she said things like, I don't see myself with anyone else. The way she made it seem like what we had was rare. And now I'm sitting here wondering how rare something can really be if it can be replaced in 7 days. That's what makes it sting. because rarity isn't supposed to be swappable. Depth isn't supposed to be interchangeable. If something is special, it's supposed to leave a gap when it's gone. But her life doesn't look like there was a gap. It looks filled immediately. And that creates this internal conflict. Was I overestimating my importance? Did I romanticize something that was lighter to her than it was to me? Because when you care deeply, you assume the other person feels the same weight. You assume the attachment is mutual. You assume the history matters equally, but being replaced quickly makes you realize something uncomfortable. Not everyone feels at the same depth you do. Some people attach fast and detach faster. Some people build quickly and rebuild quicker. Some people don't see relationships as something sacred. They see them as something seasonal. And maybe that's the difference between us. Maybe I treat connection like something that deserves reverence, and she treats it like something that deserves momentum, because momentum doesn't stop, it just redirects, and that's exactly what she did. She redirected. The same attention, the same affection, the same emotional energy, just different recipient, and that's hard to swallow because it makes you feel like the container didn't matter, just the feeling. But here's the part I'm slowly realizing. If someone can redirect their attachment that fast, then maybe what they were attached to wasn't you. It was the feeling of being with someone. And that's not the same thing. There's a difference between loving a person and loving the experience of not being alone. And if she loved the experience more than she loved me, then of course she could replace me quickly, because she wasn't replacing a soul connection, she was replacing the role. And that hurts, but it also clarifies, because I don't want to be someone's role. I don't want to be someone's emotional placeholder. I don't want to be someone's for now. I want to be chosen with intention, held with depth, missed when I'm gone. And if she could swap me out in a week, then maybe I wasn't held the way I thought I was. But that doesn't mean I wasn't valuable. It just means she didn't hold me deeply. And those are two different things. Still, there's something about the speed that keeps echoing. 7 days. It makes it feel like I didn't leave a mark, like I didn't leave impact, like I didn't leave space. But I know that's not true, because impact isn't measured by how long someone stays single. It's measured by what they learned, what they felt, what they carry forward. And even if she doesn't feel it now, one day when the distraction fades, when the excitement settles, when she's sitting in quiet, you might finally process what she skipped, and by then I won't be waiting. Because here's what I'm starting to understand. Being replaced quickly doesn't mean you were insignificant. It means the other person couldn't sit with loss, and loss reveals maturity. If I'm still here processing, still reflecting, still rebuilding, then I'm not behind, I'm just doing it properly. 7 days might have been enough for her to move forward, but it's not enough to erase who I was, and I refuse to let her timeline determine my value, because I wasn't just someone she dated, I was someone who showed up fully, and that doesn't become meaningless just because someone else showed up faster. She replaced me in a week, but that week says more about her relationship with discomfort than it does about my worth. There's another layer to this that I don't talk about out loud. Anger, not loud anger, not screaming or crashing out. The quiet kind. The kind that sits in your chest when you realize how easily someone redirected what you treated like sacred. Because I stayed loyal, I stayed committed, I stayed focused, and she moved on in 7 days. That makes you question fairness. It makes you feel like you played the game honestly while someone else was already preparing their next move. And I hate that it feels like a game, because I never approached it like one. When I was with her, I wasn't scanning the room for upgrades, I wasn't entertaining backups, I wasn't lining up options just in case. I was in it, fully, and now I'm sitting here realizing she either wasn't or she detached long before I knew. And that's what builds resentment. The idea that I was emotionally present while she was emotionally preparing. Because now it feels like I was loyal to a version of her that didn't exist anymore, like I was committed to something she had already mentally ended. And that realization stings. But here's where it shifts, because the anger starts turning into clarity. If she could replace me that quickly, then she was already disconnecting. And if she was already disconnecting, then the relationship wasn't as mutual as I believed. And if it wasn't mutual, then I wasn't losing someone who was fully invested. I was losing someone who was already halfway out. That doesn't make it hurt less, but it reframes it, because now it's not about me being not enough. It's about her not being anchored. Anchored people don't drift that fast. Anchored people don't swap attachments like playlists. Anchored people sit with loss, and if she didn't sit with it, then maybe she never held it deeply. And that realization hurts, but it also frees me, because I don't want someone who can replace depth with distraction. I don't want someone who needs constant attention to feel stable. I want someone who values history, who respects connection, who understands that what you build with someone isn't disposable. And if she replaced me in a week, then maybe I was disposable to her. But that doesn't mean I'm disposable in general. It just means she wasn't built to keep me. And there's a difference. Still, there's a part of me that wonders if she ever thinks about it, if she ever pauses, if she ever compares, if she ever realizes how fast she moved. But I can't live in that space, because waiting for someone to feel what you felt is a trap, and I refuse to trap myself in her timeline. 7 days, that's how fast she moved. But here's the truth. I'd rather take my time healing than rush into something new just to prove I can. I'd rather rebuild properly than distract myself temporarily, because I know what I gave, and I know how I showed up. And I know I don't need to rush into something new to validate that. She replaced me in a week, but I'm rebuilding myself at a pace that lasts, and that's not weakness, that's depth. You know what else being replaced in a week does? It makes you question whether you were ever truly seen. Because if someone really sees you, your patterns, your effort, your loyalty, your depth, they don't just slide into something new like you were a temporary rental. They feel the absence, they sit in it, they notice the difference, and I keep wondering if she noticed the quiet after I stopped calling, if she noticed the lack of consistency I used to bring, if she noticed that the stability I provided isn't something you just duplicate overnight, or if she just filled the silence so fast that there was no space to notice it all. That's what hurt, the possibility that I wasn't deeply registered, that I was experienced but not understood, because there's a difference between being with someone and truly knowing them. And when someone replaces you quickly, it feels like they never fully knew the weight of what they had. It feels like they liked the experience of you, not the essence of you. And I can handle someone not choosing me, but it's harder to handle feeling like I was easy to move past. I keep thinking about how careful I was, how intentional I was, how I didn't play games, how I didn't keep backups, how when things got hard, I leaned in instead of pulling away. And in the end, it feels like none of that slowed her down. 7 days. That number keeps echoing like a clock ticking in reverse, because for me, 7 days after a breakup feels raw, it feels heavy, it feels like I'm still adjusting to the silence, but for her, 7 days was enough to build something new. And that contrast makes you feel like you loved harder than you were loved. And that's a lonely realization, because loving harder isn't something you brag about, it's something you feel when the other person moves on faster, and you're left holding the emotional weight. But here's what I'm starting to see clearly. Just because she moved on quickly doesn't mean she processed it deeply. Speed isn't strength. Speed can be avoidance. Speed can be distraction. Speed can be ego protection. Sometimes people rush into something new not because the old thing meant nothing, but because it meant too much. Because sitting alone would force them to face what they lost, and not everyone is strong enough to sit in that kind of silence, and maybe I am. Maybe the reason I'm still here thinking, reflecting, feeling, is because I actually let it hit me. I didn't numb it, I didn't immediately replace it, I didn't run from it, I sat with it. And sitting with pain requires maturity, It requires discipline, it requires emotional depth. So maybe this isn't about me being less valuable, maybe it's about me being more capable of processing, and that's not weakness, that's growth. Still, there's something about knowing she's creating new memories that stings, because those were supposed to be ours. The random laughs, the new places, the inside jokes. Now someone else gets that version of her, and I have to let go of the idea that it was only meant for me. And that's hard, but here's the truth I can't ignore anymore. If she could replace me in a week, then I was loving someone who wasn't built to stay long term. Because people who are built to stay don't detach that fast. They don't redirect that easily. They don't swap depth for novelty overnight. And I don't want someone who can treat connection like it's interchangeable. I want someone who understands the weight of history, who understands that what you build with someone isn't disposable, who understands that real attachment doesn't reset in 7 days. So yeah, she replaced me in a week, but I'm rebuilding myself in a way that lasts longer than a rebound ever will. And when I look back at this one day, I won't just remember the hurt, I'll remember the clarity, because being replaced quickly doesn't mean you were insignificant. It means the other person wasn't anchored, and I refuse to confuse someone else's instability with my lack of worth. 7 days might have been enough for her to move forward, but it's not enough to erase what I was. And one day, when I'm with someone who values depth the way I do, this week won't define me. It'll just be proof that I was never meant to stay where I was easily replaced. At some point, the hurt turns into something quieter. Not lighter, just quieter. Because you can only replay 7 days so many times before your brain gets tired of the echo. And when the noise slows down, clarity starts creeping in. I started asking myself a different question. Not why did she replace me so fast, but why am I measuring my value through her speed? Because that's what I was doing without realizing it. I was using her timeline as a mirror. If she moved on quickly, I must not have mattered deeply. If she looks happy, I must have been replaceable. If she didn't hesitate, I must not have left impact. But that logic is flawed. Her speed is not a measurement of my depth. Her distraction is not a reflection of my worth. Her ability to move forward quickly doesn't erase the way I showed up. And once I started separating those things, something shifted, because I know how I loved, I know I was intentional, I know I was loyal, I know I didn't treat what we had like it was temporary. So if she did, that says something about her capacity, not my value. And I had to stop turning her coping style into my insecurity, because that's what I was doing. I was letting her rebound rewrite my confidence. I was letting her quick transition convince me I was forgettable. But forgettable doesn't leave you reflecting. Forgettable doesn't leave you rebuilding. Forgettable doesn't leave you questioning your own growth. What we had meant something, even if she chose not to sit in that meaning. And maybe that's the difference between us. I process, she replaces. I reflect, she redirects. I sit with the silence, she fills it. And neither is necessarily wrong, but one builds depth, the other builds distraction, and depth always wins in the long run. Because distraction fades, novelty fades, rebounds lose their adrenaline, and when that happens, whatever was avoided eventually resurfaces, and by then I won't be stuck in the same place, because while she rushed forward, I rebuilt properly, and rebuilding properly takes longer, but it lasts longer too. 7 days might have been enough for her to feel okay, but it wasn't enough for me to lose myself, and that's what matters. So yeah, she replaced me in a week. And for a while that felt like proof that I wasn't enough, proof that I was temporary, proof that I was easy to move past. But now, it feels like proof of something else. Proof that I love deeply. Proof that I don't detach easily. Proof that I don't treat connection like it's disposable. Because if I could have replaced her that fast and didn't, that says something. It says I value what I build. It says I respect history. It says I don't jump into something new just to soothe my ego. And I'd rather be the one who heals slowly than the one who forgets quickly. because forgetting quickly doesn't mean you're strong. Sometimes it just means you're avoiding, and I don't want to avoid. I want to grow. I want to understand what worked, what didn't, what I tolerated, what I ignored. I want to rebuild my confidence without attaching it to someone else's timeline. She replaced me in a week, but she didn't replace my character. She didn't replace my loyalty. She didn't replace my ability to love fully. And one day, someone is going to experience that depth and recognize it immediately. Not treat it like a placeholder, not treat it like a phase, but treat it like something rare. Because rare things don't get swapped in 7 days. They get protected, so maybe this wasn't about me being replaced. Maybe it was about me being redirected away from someone who could move on that quickly towards someone who won't. 7 days hurt, but it also clarified. I don't want to be in a position where I can be replaced that easily ever again. And the only way to guarantee that is to choose someone who understands the weight of what they're holding, and next time, I will. She said I wasn't man enough, and I won't lie. That one stuck, not because I believe it, but because when someone you love questions your masculinity, it hits somewhere deeper than regular criticism. It's not just about behavior, it's identity. It's everything you thought you were doing right suddenly being reframed as weakness. What does man enough even mean? Because I showed up, I communicated, I stayed loyal, I tried to fix things instead of run from them, but apparently that wasn't enough. Apparently being calm instead of aggressive was a problem. Apparently wanting to talk things through instead of shutting down made me soft. Apparently expressing emotion made me less of a man. And that's when I realized something dangerous. Some people confuse masculinity with dominance. They confuse emotional control with emotional absence. They confuse stability with weakness. And if that's the definition she was using, then maybe I was never supposed to fit it. But still, when she said it, it made me question myself. Because no matter how confident you are, words like that linger. They make you replay moments. They make you wonder if you should have been tougher, colder, less available, less understanding. And that's how toxic standards start reshaping you quietly. I started analyzing everything after that. Was I too patient, too willing to compromise, too quick to apologize? Because I thought being a man meant being responsible, being accountable, being emotionally mature. But maybe she wanted something louder, more dominant, more unpredictable, and that's confusing because society tells men two opposite things. Be strong, but don't be cold. Be vulnerable, but don't be weak. Lead, but don't control. And somehow you're supposed to balance all of it perfectly. So when she said I wasn't man enough, I started wondering, was I too emotionally available? Was I too steady? Was I not exciting enough? But here's the truth that took me time to accept. Being consistent doesn't make you less of a man. Being calm doesn't make you less masculine. Being emotionally intelligent doesn't make you weak. It makes you evolved. And not everyone is comfortable with evolved. Some people are used to chaos, used to intensity, used to men who are hard to access emotionally. So when they meet someone who communicates clearly and stands firm without yelling, it feels unfamiliar. And unfamiliar can feel unmanly to someone who's been conditioned differently, but that's not my problem to fix. The deeper issue wasn't her words. It was what they tried to take from me, my confidence, because when someone attacks your masculinity, they're attacking your foundation. They're saying you're not enough as you are, and that's heavy. But here's what I had to learn. If being man enough means being emotionally unavailable, if it means suppressing how I feel, if it means pretending I don't care, if it means dominating instead of communicating, then I don't want that version of masculinity, because strength isn't loud. It's controlled, it's stable, it's secure enough to not overreact. It's confident enough to not prove itself constantly. And maybe she mistook calm for weak. Maybe she mistook kindness for softness. Maybe she mistook emotional awareness for insecurity. But that doesn't redefine me, it just shows what she was used to. What hurt the most wasn't that she left, it was that she framed it like I lacked something, like I needed to become more, like I needed to step up into some undefined standard. But love isn't about becoming someone else to fit someone's idea of masculinity. It's about alignment. If she needed someone louder, more dominant, more emotionally distant, that's preference, not proof that I wasn't enough. Wasn't. Because being man enough shouldn't mean performing toughness. It should mean integrity, leadership, emotional control, responsibility, and I had all of that, just not in a way that matched her expectations, and that's okay. I realized something important after sitting with it. The right woman won't question your masculinity. She'll feel safe in it. She won't need you to be aggressive to feel protected. She won't need you to be emotionally shut down to feel secure. She won't test your dominance to measure your worth. She'll recognize strength in stability. She'll see leadership and accountability. She'll see masculinity in consistency, because real masculinity isn't about intimidation. It's about presence. It's about knowing who you are without needing to prove it constantly. And here's the part nobody talks about. Sometimes when someone says you're not man enough, what they really mean is you're not toxic enough for what I'm used to. Because chaos feels passionate to some people, silence feels strong to some people, emotional distance feels masculine to some people, but healthy masculinity feels boring if you're addicted to instability, and that's not an insult, it's reality. Some people equate unpredictability with strength, and when they meet steadiness, they don't know what to do with it. I had to ask myself something hard. Was I actually lacking, or was I just not performing? Because there's a difference. Lacking means I don't possess something. Performing means I'm pretending to. And I refuse to perform masculinity for approval. I refuse to become colder just to seem stronger. I refuse to suppress my emotional intelligence just to look dominant. Because the right person won't require that. They'll appreciate it. If anything, being called not man enough forced me to define what that means for myself. To me, being a man means standing on your word, protecting without controlling, communicating without yelling, being emotionally disciplined, owning your mistakes, leading with stability, and I did all of that. So if that wasn't enough for her, it doesn't mean I failed. It means we defined strength differently. I won't let one person's perception reshape my identity, because masculinity isn't loud. It isn't about dominance. It isn't about intimidation. It's about internal control. It's about consistency. It's about knowing who you are when no one is watching. And if someone mistakes calm strength for weakness, that says more about what they're used to than what I am. She said I wasn't man enough, but I am man enough to walk away instead of yelling, stay calm instead of escalating, express how I feel instead of suppressing it, choose growth instead of ego, and that's the kind of man I'll stay, because the right woman won't need me to prove my masculinity. She'll feel secure in it, and I'd rather be steady and misunderstood than loud and respected for something I'm not. If being man enough means losing emotional depth, then I'll pass, because real strength doesn't shout, it stands.